right, we are up. This is an impromptu drop in, and the brother I'm bringing on was good enough to drop in with me, have a casual conversation on this. So welcome again, brother BGS.
Hello, good people. What's going on, Dr. T? Dr. Truth, as we know you around these parts.
Not much, man. Just trying to get on your page. I'm gonna do my little closest rendition of a Shatterpoint. We'll have a discussion on this. We'll probably bring some people up later. We can kind of feel it out organically. Let me see here. Try and get my own little video up on YouTube so I can see what we're looking at. It's about 10 people so far, so we're gonna let them drop through. What's up, everybody? Hope everybody's well. Let's see. Yeah. I don't even know if YouTube is okay. Yeah, there it goes.
Yeah, just seen it.
Yeah, it doesn't always show. Like when I post stuff, I don't even know if YouTube is not always privy. What's up, Malika? We got Kwame. We got I'm Listening, Death Before Dishonor, Trouble Man, Donald. What's going on, y'all? So as folks know, we started a discussion Wednesday. We were talking about Candyman and the race and gender dynamics to that as it pertains to black men, mostly doing what I call a black masculinist review, which basically, is an analysis of the representation of black men in films that are, or at least this week, dubbed black films. And we get to pay attention to how even black films portray black men, what the politics of them are. Today we're dealing with, as you can see, the film Respect on the life of Aretha Franklin. Appreciate that support, Malika. Good to have you. Yeah, and this one is not the Cynthia Erivo version. This is the theatrical version starring Jennifer Hudson. I have not seen the Cynthia Erivo version yet. I'm not exactly, I'm not protesting it, but I'm not sure if I'll get to it either. We can get to that in a minute. Let's see. All right. So Brother BGS was kind enough to watch it today. Did you get a chance to see Candyman yet?
I've only seen portions of Candyman. I haven't seen the whole thing.
Okay.
It's well, I haven't got deep enough into it, but I noticed the actor that played the protagonist in Candyman. He's the same one that was. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. He's the same one that played in Watchmen, the reboot of Watchmen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's almost the same kind of. I don't know. I wouldn't say soft character, but sensitive character.
Call him sensitive.
I don't know. Accommodating.
What's going on, Dardar? Appreciate that support. We got Sun God in the house. We got Slam, Death Before Dishonor, Trouble Man. What's going on? Essential Entities, Bovine Breed. We got some interesting names up in here.
Bovine Breed.
We got Javon. I apologize if I mispronounced that. We got DH. So yeah, no, there were some brothers that pointed out, the issues they have with his character, choices.
Mm-hmm.
And even from Aquaman on, he's either, as you put it, sensitive or he's failing in some significant way. And I actually hadn't thought of it until people stacked up. There's one brother on my Facebook page who just kind of stacked up his roles, and I was like, man, That is a
Well,
consistent set of issues.
yeah, well, maybe he's a character actor. He's the muscular, sensitive black man. Almost like the was it the was it not Allspice? What is it? The Old Spice guy
Hmm.
on the horse.
Oh damn, let's go. Just kind of strange, huh? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Look again.
Look at
Look again. They're diamonds. Look again.
oh wow, that's cold.
Uh-huh.
That is cold.
Mhm. Look at your man. Now look at me. Look back at your man. Like look at me.
I was hoping that brother's career would take off because those commercials were hilarious.
They were hilarious. I hope he got paid.
I saw him I think he did a Tyler Perry movie, but I ain't really seen him too much after that. But I don't watch everything, so that could just be me. Let's see here. Okay, so let's see. We got Troy in here. We got Blade Runner. What's going on? So about 71 people. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel if you would. So we're doing a kind of drop in. I'm probably going to do a short. It'll be a short review of Shang-Chi.
Okay.
Because I had some issues with that as well. But if you're going to do a Marvel movie these days, there's just no way I'm not going to end up having some issue with it because of who they're trying to market to.
Yeah, where the Disney princess permeates everything they do. So.
Oh man. Appreciate the support, Javon. Which is interesting because we still haven't seen an African American prince in any of the movies. I mean, even if I think it was a couple years ago, we talked about how T'Challa is technically the first Black Disney prince.
Right.
But that being said, we still haven't seen an African American prince, even in The Princess Frog, where you had an African American princess, and that's important to me, or at least it was, because I'm single father to a son, and when he was little, I wanted to take him to movies where he could see little boys like himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure we ever found one. I think the closest thing we found was the animated Spider-Man movie with
Miles
Morales. Thank you.
Miles Morales, yes.
Yeah. And they were around the same age at that point, but when he was real little coming up, I remember going to school and they Halloween, the kids would be wearing their Disney stuff, and that was like the first period where Black girls could start wearing Black Disney stuff. And I was like, how do you not have? I mean, really, African American men or boys were the only ones that weren't represented, and it used to bother the hell out of me to see women care, But anyway, so that's one of the things that always got to me. We still haven't seen an African American. Let's see. Malika said he saw Shang-Chi. It wasn't as bad. He said, I have a few issues too. Yeah.
That's one thing about most most movies like that Disney produces. They're never really bad. It's just you have issues with them, but it's very difficult for Disney to actually put out a bad movie, other than maybe the second Star Wars movie they put out. That was bad.
The original man said only Black Prince movie we had was Coming to America. But he wasn't African American, but I feel you.
Yeah.
It was weird though that the second one kind of ruined it for me. But then I went back and watched the first, and I realized they didn't change him much. I was different. That was what that was. That was, I was real young. There was no such thing as red pill, So I didn't really have a lens to look at that. But seeing the sequel and watching it again, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, seeing how as you mature, basically you see more things because it resonates because you actually experienced it or you've seen it, whether it was you or somebody close to you that's experienced it.
Yeah.
So it changes as it's supposed to.
Lady Warrior said, "What about Song of the South? That's from Disney."
Oh, okay. Yeah. Zippity doo dah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Uncle Remus. I guess Uncle Remus would classify as a African American prince.
God
So-
damn. That's cold, man. That's cold. What's up, Ian? Appreciate the support, man. Ian always dropping through with the words, so appreciate that. Uh, Valeri asked if I've seen the Flash series by the CW. Man, I stopped watching that maybe after the first season. It was the same with oh goodness, I'm blanking on everything tonight. Oh man,
Mhm.
what's
B-
the?
Black Lightning.
Thank you. See,
Mhm.
you knew what I was thinking. Yep, I watched the first season of both of those and checked out, man, because I saw which direction it was going.
Yeah.
It was just a mess. It was a mess. Uh, let's see. Let's see. Oh, he said if Javon said give my best wishes. I think he's talking about the G with the PhD. GG.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
GG. Yeah.
he's coming back through in a little bit. He's just handling some other things. I just spoke with him. He's doing his thing. But he ain't done. Yep. He said Malika said only other Prince movie we had was Coming to America and Purple Rain. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, let me see. All right. So, yep, Slam says, yep, Black Lightning was horrendous. Yeah. And I
Yeah. It
checked
was
out
terrible.
before it got to its full bloom. So, um, I couldn't do it. But anyway, all right. So, let me kind of give us a little, might have to separate this over here a little bit. And that way we can kind of put something up here for people to look at. Mm-hmm. So this is what we're looking at today. All right. So I just watched this a little earlier today, as did my brother. So we took out of our Friday to sacrifice for you all to sit through. I mean, it was. I'm not. Look, I'm
It wasn't terrible. It was okay.
right.
As a movie, it was okay. It was just that there's just well, it's not even having issues with it. You just get tired of seeing the same old tropes. Like okay, we if we're gonna sell it to black women, we have to dig this out, this out, this out. We got to put this in, and this in for them
Yeah.
to buy it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, look, I'll start out with the things I did like. There's a short list, but see, I came up in an era where when you did see black people on screen, they didn't always look right. They didn't always know how to do the lighting right. It didn't always
Mhm.
complement the skin. I'm happy to say that we're in an era where you can actually see chocolate on screen and it looks
It lit, right?
right.
Yeah, yeah,
So I did appreciate that. Folks actually look the way they're supposed
yeah,
to look. you know.
yeah. It's if anybody's ever done any kind of film work,
Mhm.
um, the hardest to get right is not black skin; it's actually white skin. Okay,
Mhm.
and if you're gonna put white characters in the film next to a darker character, man, you got to make a choice. Either you're gonna make them dark where they're gonna have less features, or you're gonna have to, or if you actually make the black person normal, you're actually gonna blow them out. They're gonna just be a glow.
Mhm. Mhm.
It'll just glow. They'll be so white they'll disappear. So,
Mhm.
but
Oh,
we have better equipment. So,
well, it looks a lot better. And then
hmm
and I now you would know better than I, but it seemed to
hmm
me that they got the era right. The clothes, the
yeah,
vehicles,
yeah,
the scenery all look very period. They look,
mm-hmm.
they did look like they did a fairly consistent job with that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially considering that the film really dealt with what do you say, like the early '60s through the '70s. It didn't come into the '80s and beyond.
No, it started it well, really started in the 50s, and then moved through the 70s, the 60s and 70s. But yeah.
Right. So it didn't. Now I didn't expect that. I didn't
hmm
expect that. I thought it was gonna, cover her whole life, and it was a good 2 hours plus. I mean, it was.
Mm-hmm.
I expected them to come a little further, but they kind of ended at the little biography they filmed. You were talking a little bit about, but they hadn't released. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, Amazing Grace is was
Mhm.
at the very end of the film.
Yeah.
That she wanted to record a gospel album, and then her her producer said, "Oh, maybe we can actually add, actually bring a film crew, actually film it live while
Mhm.
you're doing it, and then film it and then put it out so that um, people around the world can actually get an idea what the Black church is about."
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, it got lost. It never got finished. It never got edited and finished and stuff like that. So it kind of sat in a can
Mhm.
for almost 50 years.
Yeah. Well, I do have to say, Um, that was interesting. I didn't know about the little biography.
Hmm.
Like I said, I like the cinematography. I like the periodization of it.
Hmm.
And I will say, you kind of, and this happened to me when I watched Ray. You almost forget how many songs you've grown up hearing that
Yes.
really were a part of your life in some way, shape, or form. And these kind of films help you really appreciate given artists. Like when I watched Ray, I
Hmm.
forgot about how impactful his songs were. This was kind of the same thing, and it gave you an appreciation for for Aretha's voice. Even though
Hmm.
it's Jennifer Hudson, she still she sang in that style, and
Hmm.
it really was a break in that time period. And that's something I noticed in my classrooms. It's really hard, I mean, to really explain to students how important something was in its historical context.
Right. Yeah,
Because
because a lot of times it's emotional, and it's kind of hard to translate the emotion of the time.
the emotion of the time, but
Hmm.
also the significance of certain institutions too.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
now, starting with her voice, I mean, just what she sang about, how she sang it, it was fair. It was really original. It was different. But when you grow up hearing it,
Hmm.
and this is what 50 years ago, it's hard to appreciate that unless you
Yeah.
kind of grew up hearing that in some way, shape, or form. So that's part of the kind of the trial that films like this have. They have to translate to new generations how
Yeah.
significant this was back then. And then the other piece is how significant the Black church was in the mid 20th century.
Hmm.
Really the 19th century up through the mid 20th century. Um, the Black church was pivotal.
Hmm.
It's no accident that you had so many different singers and performers coming out of the church. I mean, the church was considered, it was considered school. It was music school for
Yes,
many
it
of
was.
us.
Yeah.
So she represented that tradition. And how important it was, and how many of these record industries really sought that out as well. So they kind of highlighted the importance of the church to her music in a way that that really kind of situates it in that period, and that was important. That was important. You're not really going to get an Aretha and a number of others without the Black
Hmm.
church.
Oh yeah,
Significant.
Sam Cooke. Well, all of them really. They
Oh
all
yeah,
started in church.
absolutely.
Um,
All right. So, I want to just kind of foreground those kind of things as far as that. Those are things I appreciated. The historian in me, the cultural analyst in me appreciates an acknowledgement of those institutions because we didn't have many. In terms of those we were able to use to springboard onto another plane, so to speak. So she kind of represents the height of that tradition, and so yeah. But I guess we can go through this kind of in order of the film and just let it roll however it rolls.
hmm.
So the film starts with a party, if I remember correctly,
Hmm.
and she's asleep in bed, and her father comes to get her to come sing for the people that attended the party.
Hmm.
Now, my first thought is it took me back to those old family reunions where old folks would have the young kids get up and do that new dance or
Right.
perform in some kind of way.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that tradition's been lost, but I haven't seen it, in a long time. But that was something that I remember older folks used to do. They would showcase their kids. Uh,
Hmm.
and I remember even Eddie Murphy did that in front of in the beginning of Raw. He kind of showed how his
Oh,
family
how it made him tell jokes.
made him tell jokes. I mean, and I remember in the early 80s, my mother, my grandmother, they would do that. Get up and do that dance, y'all do. And just
Hmm.
popping and locking in the living room to a room full of old folks looking at us like, and they would be cheering. They would be, they would be supportive and whatnot. But there was something about that performative thing that I haven't seen in a long time. But they did do that with her, and she came down and sang. And right there in the art, in right there was Dinah Washington, played by what, Mary J. Blige.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the audience, and they were cheering her on, and it was a really supportive gesture. It was something that you actually, it was like a multi-generational supportive gesture. And I'm not talking about the film per se, even though it was. I'm saying that as a practice in the Black community, was really kind of a foregrounding of the next generation. And you got to see older folks, support. I mean, you rarely hear older folks just blasting little kids for something. There was really
Right.
usually a supportive gesture, even if the performance wasn't great. It was a lot of love and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that also came out of the church, that kind of acceptance. Because
Yeah.
even if you were bad, okay, you could be a bad singer, but the church will still support you and pat you on the back just for getting up there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You might not be requested a whole lot,
A whole lot, yeah.
but you got love for at least doing it. So, yeah, Ian is laughing at me popping and locking. You know how it was, man. That's what it was. But anyway, so it started with that, and then you got to see, the developing. I won't say developing, but you got to see the relationship with Aretha and her parents. Okay? So she's living with her father and her grandmother, her father's mother, with her siblings, at least two sisters, right? And going from there. And then you get a chance to be introduced to her mother. You want to talk a little bit about the mother?
Yeah, the mother is her showing up, just like an absentee parent, and to take the daughters on a trip, or take the daughters back to her house or wherever she was going to take them, right? And it seemed to me that like the reversal of what it would be for a father, coming to
Mm,
see the daughter, and coming to see the kids, pick up the kids that you haven't seen in a long time.
yeah.
But that's why I said it's a little, I'm not saying it's more prevalent, but it's a little bit more prevalent back then. And
Mm,
but the thing is, knowing Black women, Black women seldom give up their children,
mm,
or they seldom leave their children with the father. So the thing is that that leads me to believe that the mother had some kind of issues because she didn't take
yeah.
her children with her.
Yeah. And usually that's the only time you saw that. The mother had to have something significant going on, drugs,
Mm-hmm.
alcohol, partying, whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
usually. But that was definitely there. And they definitely highlighted some tensions between the mother and father very,
Mm-hmm.
very early on.
Yeah.
So we did get to see a little bit of that. Um, Now, the first thing that kicked me off watching that was when she was visiting her mother that first time. She's sitting there
Mm-hmm.
at the piano. She's listening to her mother sing. She's begging her mother to keep singing. And
Mm-hmm.
then at a particular point, her mother looks over at her and says, your father doesn't own your voice.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And really, it just, as far as the film was concerned, it came out of nowhere.
Right.
And I was just like, okay, that, you don't have to, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. And this whole kind of narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And you knew that was the beginning
Yeah.
of them showing this tension. Now, y'all know my little theory in terms of a lot of these films is that they highlight the tensions between Black men and women,
Yes, they do.
and they double down on it. And I would
Mm-hmm.
say that this film, for me, this is just one man's opinion, falls in the tradition of it's not as heavy handed, but it falls in the same tradition as the TLC film, as the Salt and Pepper film,
Mm-hmm.
the Leah film, all of these films that are showcasing Black women, performers, artists, singers, so on and so forth, rappers,
Mm-hmm.
entertainers. The tension they rely on as the driving force
Mm-hmm.
is tension between Black men and women.
Oh yeah, Bobby Brown and
Oh my
and
God.
Whitney Houston. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And see, what you got to understand about storytelling is that it's not about what actually happened. You can include events in what actually happens, and
Mm-hmm.
that's very different from whatever you choose to be the guiding theme of a film. So there's incidental events, there's events that impact the person and make them, and they grow through those events, and then there's when you're a storyteller,
Yeah.
what you choose to focus on. And a
Yeah.
lot of these films, regardless of what takes place, sometimes it's between males and females, men and women, boys and girls, or not. But to choose the tension between Black men and women is a political choice.
Yeah.
A lot of these films kind of double down on that, especially in
Mm-hmm.
regard to Black women. And I think a lot of that is because of feminism, particularly white feminism, and that's the paradigm that they've set. I talked about that before. But I think this film falls into that genre. So we see it early on where,
Mhm.
the mother lets her know. And she's what I forgot to mention, she was like, what, 10? Might have been 10 years
Yes, she was
old.
10 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, when her mother's telling her, you don't really have to do this. Now, this is important because her father is,
Mhm.
one of the more well-known pastors out of Detroit. Um, damn it, I just blanked on his name. You just said it before we got on here too.
Who's that? No, talking about
Cleveland.
yeah, Cleveland was the Cleveland
Oh
wasn't
no,
her
that was
father.
the
It was
piano
her
player.
mentor, the
Yeah,
piano player.
CL.
The CL Franklin was actually the her
Yeah,
father.
Forrest Whitaker played CL Franklin.
Yeah.
Um, did a beautiful job. Appreciate that support, Joe Average brother. Um, no, now I gotta say I love Forrest Whitaker as an actor. Always,
Yes.
he plays his part. He does it well. He played her father, C.L. Franklin. He was a well-known pastor at the time.
Hmm.
What was Cleveland's name? How am I blanking on that?
James Cleveland. Yeah.
James Cleveland. He was in the film.
Yeah.
Wasn't her father, of course. That was he was
The
played the piano in
the
church.
piano player. Your church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, C.L. Franklin actually was her father, and Forrest played him well. Very stern, very disciplined,
Mm-hmm.
kind of father. And a lot of these films are they're really kind of taking these periods where they're
Hmm.
showcasing these fathers out of that generation and casting them as tyrants, and really what I
Hmm.
think you're dealing with is just a different time period, a different value set. I mean, this is coming straight out of the church,
Right.
mid 20th century. We were
Yeah.
coming really newly. I mean, this film even starts before you
Yeah.
really get Brown versus, no, it's after Brown versus Ward, but it's before the civil rights movement.
It is before the civil rights. Before the end. It was before the '60s civil rights movement. Yeah.
Before the 60s, right? So
Yeah.
so I think you have a lot of these films when they do showcase that generation of father,
Hmm.
they're using today's sensibilities
Right.
when showing it, but really not showing the era. I mean, because these men were one generation. They matter of fact, many of them grew up sharecropping.
Yeah,
I
they did.
mean, it's so that
They were still sharecropping in
well,
that
some of them
time.
were, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, they were. My mother was. So yeah.
yeah, and to not put that in context, where
Hmm.
you just start a movie and you see this father who's just really domineering, or at least that's how he's being presented. It doesn't really
Yeah,
showcase what they were up against and
yeah,
what that was.
and plus, if you talk about the different, these are not only more stern black families, but also they're black families. Period.
Hmm.
And children were not allowed that kind of latitude.
Yeah.
The children are not allowed that kind of latitude in a black family.
Hmm.
They're not.
You're
And
a child.
it's a yeah, they're not. Yeah, you have a voice, but the voice has to be toned right if
Oh
you're going
yeah.
to speak it. Yeah, and I'm sure I experienced it for my not only just my for my father, but also my mother, especially my
Mhm.
mother. You know,
Oh yeah.
and I'm sure you did too.
Oh yeah. I grew up in that era. You don't when grown folks are talking, you be
Hmm.
quiet.
Hmm.
It's the time period where there was no timeout.
Hmm.
There was no discussing with the child what they did wrong. It was
Yeah,
not your
yeah,
ass.
yeah. And you're 10 years old. You come back with an attitude. No, you get an attitude adjustment.
Right, right. Absolutely. Shout out to
Mhm.
Bradford and Sir Tice for the cash app. Appreciate that. And answering Malika, yeah, we gonna get to that black feminist propaganda porn. It was definitely there.
Oh,
Um,
it started with the mother saying that your father that your voice does not belong to your father. Your voice belongs to God. And if you don't want to do something, you don't want to sing in church, you don't have to.
mm, yeah.
Knowing that down in that era at a 10-year-old girl, that doesn't fly. Okay.
Right. You weren't gonna tell your father no.
No, no. Unless you got a doggone good reason.
Now I
Yeah,
do.
especially go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish what you were gonna
No,
say.
yeah, and that's where the a lot of people think that this idea of independence and feminism started with the boomers. No, no. If Aretha Franklin was not a boomer, this started way before, and that kind of attitude that the mother had. Because you got to remember, her mother, they didn't show it, but her mother left, and her mother had another family.
Mm. Yeah, they
She
didn't show
was she didn't show that. Okay, she
it.
was she had she. This is what they call a walking divorce, right? She didn't divorce the father, right? They just split up, and she just went and started another family with another man. So they never put it down on paper.
Right.
But those were those times. They never brought that up.
But I do want to touch on this little piece to it too, with this whole notion of the stern, kind of maniacal, overbearing father. This whole theme about it. One of the things I noticed is a lot of these films out of the 50s through the 70s really double down on that narrative to highlight a popular concept now of toxic masculinity. What you notice when mothers, who are the majority of parents post 1970s, you notice when they're stern with their children, that's not really considered toxic femininity. You know what I mean? It's not considered maniacal, domineering, problematic. They're not presented as monsters.
No, they actually present black women or women, especially black women, more like the white women of the day, understanding and like for instance in the scene. I don't know if you caught your super chat or not, but like the scene when right after, I guess after Aretha was actually supposedly molested. But the thing is, there's a scene in the kitchen where his mother, her grandmother, is actually pressing the girl's hair because they have to go to church. Yeah, and she refused to have her hair pressed. And basically, she says, either you're gonna sit in this chair or I'm gonna beat you, or I'm gonna beat your butt, right? And Aretha bends over.
He did.
Yeah. But thing is, now we know back in the day that was an invitation. Okay.
That was an invitation. Matter of fact, that was disrespectful. That meant
disrespectful.
Challenging. Usually you sat there until they got the belt or whatever else. But when you're gonna turn around and put your behind in the air, like I'm just gonna take it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So and what the mother did, the grandmother do. Now most black kids would say, okay, she can get her behind beat, within an inch of her life for defiance.
Right.
But the thing is, she sat down and talked to her. Okay, sit down. What's wrong? I said, that's more like white feminists.
It was like white feminists, and it was right after the molestation. But we'll get to that in a second, because I wanted to finish this point about the domineering mother. Not only, I just want to say real quickly, not only are women who are considered quote unquote strong not generally portrayed as being toxic when they're domineering in the same kind of way, when they're domineering to their boys, nobody has a problem with it. It's only a question of when a parent, particularly a father figure, a male parent, is domineering to girls. And I think the reason we have that is because we live in this era where you're not supposed to tell women and girls anything. They just inherently know, they're inherently good people, they're inherently pure, and any kind of fathering is seen as an intrusion of their freedom. So I don't care if you're talking about whatever problematic figures you want to look at, because there is a number we could kind of go to that I think this film tries to invoke, whether you're looking at Serena and Venus's father, Joe Jackson. I don't care if you're talking about that kind of dynamic, or if you come to the contemporary moment, you look at someone like T.I. Right? The idea is that fathering in and of itself is an intrusive engagement that almost inherently trumps over the freedom and purity of girlhood and womanhood. And there's a lot of that in this film that's real subtle, but it really comes about. Like, I'd say one of the guiding themes of this film for me is that black men in particular, and men in general, because they do this with white men too, but black men in particular really kind of oppress, black women, and there's kind of trampling out of their inherent freedom. And if anything, they disrupt the natural bond between all women. There's a lot of these codes, but we'll get to it. So let's hit up the big reveal, the molestation scene. What did you see?
It was, at first it was subtle, now they're having the big party as they normally do, and I guess either he didn't invite her to sing at the party, or she didn't want to sing, so she's up in bed, and
she said he didn't invite her. Yeah,
he didn't invite her to sing. That's what she says. Okay, so he comes into the room,
This is a
young man comes in the
gentleman
room.
in his 20s or so, it looks like.
Yeah, like maybe late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, they didn't. I don't think they said. Did they say his name? I don't recall his name.
I don't think that didn't catch his name. I don't think he was somebody. I don't think they
Mhm.
did call a name.
Yeah, I don't think they
He
ever
just,
showed him before or after that scene.
right, and he's just he says she's pretty, and he says he likes her voice, and he asks her does she have a boyfriend,
Mhm.
and of course she says no, and he says I can be your boyfriend,
Mhm.
which is already strange, and she gives her that look like she doesn't really um, reply to him. But the thing is, and he starts to close the door. The thing is, this takes place in like a house full of people. It's a big house, and it's got to be 50 people in the house at this party.
Right.
And he closes the door, and you can see people walking past her door outside. Outside, right? And he
Mhm.
closes the door. So if she didn't cry. I don't know if she didn't cry out or whatever happened. Thing is,
Mhm.
this was strange to me that she would get molested in a party when there's a bunch of people on the other side of the door, especially somebody, one girl that's young. But
Right.
I found that problematic. Okay,
Yeah.
and I found it problematic that she didn't say anything
Mm. Okay.
because you have a strange man enter your room at night and you don't say anything.
Well, there was a couple things that bother me. So she's still about 10. They're using the
Right.
same actress, and I think it's the same time period. So she's still
Yeah.
about 10 years old. She's asleep. Party starts. This guy comes in, and I really want to say he might have woke her up. I mean, but I can't remember if she was asleep
I
or
know.
what.
No, no, she wasn't asleep. She
She
was
was,
she was
she was
listening. Yeah.
asleep the first time. She
Mm,
was kind of this okay, and he comes in and starts talking to her. Now, one of the things that I remembered, I can't remember which movie it was, but there was this movie. It's a white movie I was watching. They were at a wedding,
mhm,
and at one point, it was a guy and a girl. Of course, it was one of those love movies, and
mhm,
the guy had a little 5-year-old girl that he was
mhm,
dancing with at the party,
mhm,
and he joked about talking to her how he was her boyfriend, and everybody laughed and it was cute
mhm,
and whatever.
mhm.
And in this scene you see this, and one of the things that struck me was this idea about when you're just being playful, and when it comes across as this scene was intended to, where he's this
Right.
kind of pedophile. But I
Yeah.
realized in that instance, just the way black men are presented, there's not a lot of room for
Mhm.
cute. There's not a lot of
Right.
room for playful when it comes to little girls and grown black men. But in films, where you see other kinds of characters, other racial groups represented, they can be cute, they can be playful, and it doesn't have to be this kind of pedophilic idea. But it definitely comes across here because that was the intent, and the idea was that she had been violated. But shout out to one of my supporters who actually read the biography before
Mhm,
the film. One of the
mhm,
things that frustrated him, and I'm only not going to shout him out by name because he didn't give me permission. So, but he says, and I'm going to read from him. He says, what happened was she had a child at 12 years old by a schoolmate.
mhm,
Said they omitted that from the film. She even
mhm,
mentioned his name in her memoir, some guy
mhm.
named Edward Jordan. She
Yeah.
was 12, he was 15. Now
Mhm.
that's significantly different because in this scene, he's 20 something years old, late teens, early 20s. I think he was early 20s. He
Right.
comes into a room during a party, closes the door behind him, and that's all you see. But the
Yeah.
subtext is that he violated her, when in
Mhm.
actuality, she was 12 and had a 15-year-old, and got pregnant by a 15-year-old in her class. So, just the way the representation of black males is presented, and it's not to say that there aren't, I'm not at all arguing that there aren't black men who were doing, these kind of pedophilic
Oh
acts.
yeah.
I'm not suggesting that that's not the case. What I am suggesting is you have that across the board, and don't forget whose channel you on. You plenty of that happening with women. As a matter of
Mhm.
fact, Mary J. Blige, who's playing Dinah Washington in this film, was recently accused of that very thing at
Mm.
the early part of her career with a young man who was 16, which is, whether you like it or not, illegal. He's
Mhm.
underage. He's not old enough to consent. It was
Mm.
statutory rape, in terms of if that genuinely took place, and the guy who accused her of it came forth publicly. You can Google that.
Mhm.
How that didn't make the radar of this at all. So the irony for me in this film is you have to fabricate a rape or a molestation scene, a rape scene with an older gentleman in this film,
Mm-hmm.
And yet you actually have one of the most popular, women characters in real life playing another popular character in the film who actually was accused of that, and there's no conversation with it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that was ironic to me. And I
Yeah.
watched, black women talk about this film and talk about their abuse, talk about actually having experience, being molested at a young age. And I'm saying this
Mm-hmm.
as a man who was molested at a young age. And I'm saying, how is it not only that the stories of black males seem to evaporate and we act
Mm-hmm.
like this doesn't happen to black males at all, but you're going to fabricate a story
Mm-hmm.
when you don't really need to, and at the same time eliminate and silence black men's experiences while castigating black men through this fictitious character and using a black woman actress who actually did do this and not say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all tell me.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, it set the tone for the whole movie.
Yeah, it did.
That one little, I don't think the scene was more than a minute,
No, it
and
was.
it set the tone for the whole movie. You know, like I said, the reaction in the kitchen when she didn't want to get her hair done, her rebelliousness, her
Mhm.
whole rebelliousness toward her father and her family, and toward men, actually stemmed from that supposedly that one incident.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And they kind of, it really, I think what they were doing there too, which is a feminist ploy,
Mm-hmm.
is her grandmother didn't spank her. When you kind of got the feeling in any other instance like that, she would have got that behind whoop.
Yeah.
But her grandmother didn't, because there's this super powerful female bond that women have, and she
Mm-hmm.
knew in that moment that her granddaughter needed sensitivity because something vile had likely just happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of bond that they all have, and you could kind of, but in real life she would have got her behind whooped, and anyway. But they have this idea around, this kind of magical power that bonds all women, and this
Mm-hmm.
oppressive force that black men in particular bring to bear, and they kind of play on those tropes. So anyway, let's see. Did anything else happen in her childhood we should touch on? She saw her mother. The molestation takes place.
Yeah, and
Mm,
then and then that's when the because that's when the her father's the aggressiveness or the sternness of her father actually shows up
okay.
when she refuses. Remember the birthday party where she refuses to talk, just like out of like just like Maya Angelou. I
Oh,
think it
that's
was her
right. That's
11th
right. That's
birthday, and she wouldn't
right.
blow out the candles, and somebody
Mhm.
just baked the cake, and she wouldn't speak. She hadn't spoken for 3 weeks,
Well, that
and
was, yeah. So they find out at a particular point. There's actually a scene where she comes in. Her father's listening to records in his study. At
right.
he's listening to records, which they give you the impression was something that he regularly did. So he's kind of
Mm,
introducing her to all these different genres of music and so on and
mm,
so forth. And so he's sitting on her lap, or she, excuse me, she's sitting on his lap, and they're
mm,
talking. He gets the impression there's something wrong,
mm,
very early on, that she doesn't want to kind of talk about, because she asked the question, "What would you do if I wasn't here?"
yeah,
Right. And I think she was kind of talking about maybe living with her mother, but they didn't say. So I'm not
it
sure.
is. Yeah.
They didn't say. So that's just I'm just guessing, but that's not something they said. The phone call comes in, and
Mm-hmm.
his mother, her grandmother, picks up the phone and calls him over,
Mm-hmm.
says that her mother has died of a heart attack. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
he says, in that given moment, "I'll tell the kids tomorrow."
Mm-hmm.
And the mother says, "You can't wait till tomorrow to tell these babies their mother died." She kind of,
Mm-hmm.
at that moment, Aretha hears it, starts crying, and doesn't speak again for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Even has a birthday party and doesn't
Mm-hmm.
speak at the party, to which her father is extremely frustrated, which they take as an opportunity to use that scene to drive down the point of how disconnected he is from his daughter, and
Right.
how much of a tyrant he is, because he wants her to be thankful to the people that showed up or brought gifts, and
Mm-hmm.
she's not saying anything. So he's being insensitive to her pain,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rather than, he's a single father, and I'm telling you this as a single father. I can't tell you how many mistakes I've made, but I'm muddling through. And it's one thing BGS can talk to you about this as well. Did you get any instruction manuals when you had your children? Were they born
Mm,
with instruction manuals?
nope. Nope. The only instruction I had was I was the oldest of five. So, and
Yeah,
if you're in the black family, if you're the oldest, that means you are the default babysitter.
you see that.
Hmm.
See that I was the oldest out of the two of us, my sister and I, but there's not a lot of instructions to
No.
this. You do the best you can, and especially if you're the only parent. And so he's doing the best he can. And I'm not saying that he can't be held accountable. What I have a
Mm.
problem with is that there's no room for error. His errors were all positioned as oppressive,
Yes.
not as a father who's trying to figure out what to do with this little girl that won't speak.
Yeah. He's positioned more as a tyrant.
He's positioned as a tyrant. You
Hmm.
know? So anyway, so that was behind the silence, and
Hmm.
he finally takes her to a rehearsal, I think it was, and it might have been like it was almost like a counseling session.
Hmm.
Was that
Oh
with
yeah, there was James Cleveland. In other
James
words,
Cleveland?
the music has always kind of saved her, and she needs to rehearse for she guess she's going to do a song
Mhm.
like the next day at church,
Right.
and basically her father takes her to James Cleveland. You need to get her right,
Right.
basically. You know,
Fix her.
you got to fix her, yeah, because
Yeah.
she has to perform tomorrow,
Mhm.
and that goes back to what her her mother had told her, if ever you don't want to sing, don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was pressing down on that because he knew she
Hmm.
loved to sing, and he was using that, I think, as well to get her out of, this silence. He was trying to
Hmm.
break her out of it. He
Hmm.
was worried that this would become something, permanent. And
Hmm.
he was trying to break her out. So she's meeting with Cleveland. Cleveland is playing the piano and getting
Hmm.
her going, and then
Hmm.
she ends up singing the next day at church. And then there they transition to her a number of years older. And
Hmm.
this is where they bring in Jennifer Hudson. So she's a young adult at this point.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
18, 19, something like that.
Fairly young,
Hmm.
but she's singing in the church at this point, and they kind of show you that she already has relationships with people like Martin Luther King.
Hmm.
She's already kind of curious and tied into the developing and advancing civil rights movement.
Hmm.
So they show you a young Aretha in the midst of this movement, following her father's lead in his church as his premier singer while he's preaching. So
Hmm.
they're kind of going that route. And then and then all of a sudden she goes home after singing, and what do we see, BGS coming out
Yeah, he has two not babies, but two young boys
out of nowhere?
out of nowhere. Yeah.
Just out of nowhere, she comes home. She got two kids,
Hmm.
and no mention who they came from, how they got there. As a matter of fact, they
Hmm.
made a point later in the film to say she won't talk about where the kids come from,
Mm.
which was interesting. Now, I haven't read Aretha's biography. When I bring people on a little bit later, I'm hoping, hopefully somebody will come up who has had a chance to read it. I haven't, but but I'm talking more about the film and
Hmm.
the way the film told her, her story. And I'm looking strictly at the story itself. They didn't explain where these two kids came from. So she's unmarried. She's still living at home. She's got two
Hmm.
kids, and no mention of the father or fathers at all.
Hmm.
None. Um, and then, of course, she meets uh, Marlon Wayans' character, right? Ted White,
Hmm.
who later becomes her husband and manager. And all indications suggest that Marlon and Jennifer have actually started to deal with each other as a somewhat of a couple of some sort in real life,
Oh, okay. That
based
would
off
make
of the
sense.
film. Yeah, they kind of had some rhythm. So apparently, they are kind of dealing with each other on some form. I can't say what. Um, but they meet for the first time at this party at the house.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is where CL, her father, threatens him to leave
Yeah, yeah.
in front of everybody. Yeah,
In front of everybody, and yeah, he gets the vibe that this man is no good for you.
right, right. And of course, anybody that, and now I'm a PK, I'm a preacher's kid. My father's a retired pastor, and that
Hmm.
whole rumor about PKs being, kind of out there is definitely true. So, so of course, the more you tell Aretha not to deal with this man, yeah, she gonna deal with him. So,
Hmm.
so
Well,
her,
she picked him, and she that's that man that you see from across the room because she approached him.
yeah, she did. She did. What it was interesting. It was an interesting little Kevin Samuels moment because she didn't walk up straight on. She was heading toward him. She got interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he walked up behind her and started speaking, she got this smile on her face. So
Mm-hmm.
it was one of those things where, you could see her as a young woman. She's not straight, hitting on dudes. She's letting guys know she's interested, and she's letting them make the first step.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
She's putting herself in his space.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And that's a performance of femininity that, Kevin talks about. We don't see a lot of, but when we think of women on the hunt, so to speak, it's not brazen masculine, what's your name, girl? It's not that kind of vibe. It's very much, I'm just going to make sure I'm in his sight line. Make sure he knows I'm here and I'm feeling him. And they give you, what do they call them here in the manosphere? What's the cues?
Indication of interest. Choose a signal, indication of interest. Yeah.
Right. So she was making sure that he saw her choosing signal. So he approaches her, and the father definitely lets it be known he's not feeling it.
Oh yeah. Well, before that, basically, the sisters know who he is, and they're trying to steer her away from him, and she's not gonna have any of it.
Right. And he even makes point of this a little bit later that, Ted makes this statement later when they do finally meet up and start to talk. He's like, I know you using me to upset your father. And he says, go ahead and use me. Use my body. Go ahead and use me. However you want to use me, which, she seems to like. But he was aware of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It was obvious, because she got the signals from her sister. She got the signals from her father. Even though she just didn't. That's how come they sent her in the house. And her grandmother actually said, "Come help me with this food, or come help me do this." Right? She knew they were trying to get her away from him. It's obvious.
Now, Cortez says something in the comment section. He says she did drugs too. Who remembers how she disrespected Soul Train? I don't think they got that far in this film. Do you remember Soul Train?
The Soul Train came a little later.
Did they show it? Because they had a couple montages. Was Soul Train in any of them?
I don't. So no, most of the stuff that we saw happened before the Soul Train era.
Okay, because I don't remember them showing that. And there was a whole
Amazing Grace was 1972, and I think Soul Train might have still been in Chicago, but it wasn't a big thing.
I don't think it was, because there was a little image that I think a number of y'all would have been familiar with. Hold on. Some of you history buffs might remember this better than I did. Somebody had to send this to me. I don't quite remember this scene.
Yeah, that was much later. That was close. Yeah, I remember the scene because I didn't see the show, but I've seen clips of it. Yeah. And that was closer, with the red hair. That was closer to. I think she was doing Sparkle. I think she's singing Sparkle, and I think that was in the late 70s.
Hey, all I'm saying is I didn't remember this Aretha right here. That's all I'm saying.
No, Aretha had come out a little bit. Yeah.
You want Soul Train naked? That's a pretty, especially for a preacher's kid.
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
Yeah, They said Aretha was highly sexual. Let's put it that way.
They gave you glimpses of it in the film, but you really didn't get the full on impression how deep this was. But okay, so there's definitely some interest in Ted, and at the same time, she's kicking off a career. Because matter of fact, that party was an announcement that she was about to go get signed in New York.
Yeah.
So her father is setting up deals for her at this point. And he takes her to New York. I forget the record label.
Columbia.
Yeah.
One of the biggest ones. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's and you can kind of, again, they keep showing how the father is disrespecting her. There's a certain point where he makes her get up and turn around and let the
I thought was it Venus Hottentot?
Yeah.
Do the twirl.
Yeah. And he says, look at her, and then he says, what she lacks in formal education, she makes up for inexperience.
Yeah, like she's on the slave block.
Yeah, or a prostitute of some sort.
Some sort. Yeah.
So they're kind of playing with that kind of whole theme to highlight how problematic her father was. But he gets her
Mm-hmm.
the deal, and she puts out about 9 records,
Mm-hmm.
but never gets a hit. Never gets a hit. You want to talk about the Dinah Washington scene, the performance?
I didn't understand it because if it was true, that was completely out of character for somebody to do that at a club.
Hmm.
Where she's gonna sing a song in tribute to her because because she's there, and Dinah Washington jumps up and she calls her a bitch and
Turns the
says you
table over.
turns the table over and makes a scene,
Hmm.
and then she runs off into her dressing room, and then Dinah Washington walks in behind her
Hmm.
and starts schooling her.
Hmm.
It starts schooling her on professionalism, which I thought was strange. Somebody just disrespected you in a room full of people,
Yeah.
and you run to your dressing room crying, and then you have this long, heartfelt discussion. I
Well, the
thought that was
first
a
thing
little odd.
she asked her is, "You trying to take me on?" I said,
Yeah,
"Ooh,
yeah,
ooh, okay."
which I did, which which I didn't see coming. You trying.
Because
In other words, you trying to embarrass me.
right, right. It started out. It seemed like it was supposed to be a dedication. Washington took it as a threat, took it as a
Hmm.
challenge, and then
Hmm.
schooled her on how her father has her singing music that's not really coming from her, that's disconnected from her. And she even goes so far as to say, "This ain't even the music your father really loves." You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So she really, plants this seed in Aretha
Yeah,
that, what she needs to be. She needs to find herself, and her
yeah.
father is the impediment to her finding herself. So again, more of what I'm telling you, the ongoing tension. The difference between this film and the Salt and Peppers and the Aaliyahs, the TLC biopics, the difference between all of those different films and this one, I think, is it's
Mhm.
not just black men that are the problem. It's now both fathers and husbands.
Right.
And usually you see boyfriends who are problematic, but this film really foregrounds fathers and husbands as the barrier for black women to not be able to express themselves.
They represent the patriarchy, right?
Right.
Because the way he treats her is, as the patriarchy says, as she's um, he owns her, right?
Yeah.
In the patriarchy, the man owns his family, right? That's his
Hmm.
family. His children actually come under his ownership, especially the girls, right?
Hmm.
Her womb, her body, who she is owned by the father. The father's supposed to direct her and guide her and put her into things. That's his job, right? And
Right.
then, when she gets married, he hands off ownership from who? From the father to the husband.
Yeah.
And she's going through the same thing with her husband,
Hmm.
where he's directing her, he's telling her what to do, he's putting her into deals and stuff like that. And she's this little she's this product
Hmm.
that they peddle and sell, and they push the product here, push the product there. In fact, the whole break, he finds a new agent for new record producer for her, and
Yeah.
goes in a different direction, but it's
Right.
always under the direction of a man.
Right.
But
And,
that but that was actually that is a representation of the black patriarchy.
well, and that's what made the next scene so impactful when
Hmm.
she starts to spend time with Ted, and she
Yeah,
comes home and decides at dinner that
yeah,
she's going to invite him without telling anybody.
right,
Even her sisters didn't know. They're setting the table. They
yeah.
said, "Why are you setting the extra setting?" She said, "Oh well, Ted's coming," and they
Yeah,
immediately know it's about to be a problem.
it's gonna problems. Yeah, she knew it was gonna be a problem.
She
So
knew it.
basically, this is open defiance of her father.
Yes. Open defiance, which the father reads right away as soon as he
Hmm.
walks. Because after Ted gets there, father walks in and sees him there,
Hmm.
and pulls a gun out. He pulled a gun out on homeboy.
That is old school. I told you about, because he knew that he was bad news and he was bad for her. And basically, Ted did not have the father's permission to be with her. He had told her to expressly stay away from her.
Mm, yeah, he did, and Ted responded to that with, "Hey, I'm gonna be here. We really, we're into each other." All
Yeah,
of that open defiance, right?
over defiance. Yeah,
You know,
in
now, no,
in his house.
in his, right, which he pointed out. Y'all ain't gonna tell me who I'm gonna have in my house.
House.
When you think about what it takes for a black man, especially at that time, to build a church, to have a home, all of that. You know, you could definitely, especially at that time period, you could definitely see, you know,
Yeah.
how that would go down.
And they're well off. It's not like, you know, they're in the hood struggling. No, they're very well off.
Right, right, right. So it's at that point where I believe that was the point she left, right? That was the point where she said,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give this a go.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna go be with him. And
Yeah.
her father says something very interesting. He says, "You're gonna beg
hmm
to have me take you back, take
hmm
you back in."
And
And
I won't do it, which
he
we
said, "I
kind of
won't do
knew.
it."
Yeah, which we kind of knew. Say, okay, well, I'd like to see you stand on that one, because we know how I'm a father, and I know, you know, yeah, it would take way more than that for me to not take my child back in.
Now you tell me, because I don't have daughters. Would a daughter believe that? If you told your daughter that, looking her dead in her eye, even though you know you don't mean it, would she believe
I mean, he meant it at the time. Okay, he meant it at the
it?
time,
Did at the time.
and she knew he meant it at the time. Okay.
So if she came back in the next 20, 48 hours,
Oh yeah, yeah. No. You be on the porch. No, go back with him. In fact, here's the rest of your clothes.
right, right. So she leaves with Ted. They move in together and start, and he takes over as her manager. But you could tell early on it's not starting out well. He's beating up club owners for money, you know, I guess back money that's due, you know, and he's talking about how nobody's going to disrespect us, and he's legitimately trying to get her name out there.
hmm
You know, they kind of let you know early on that he's got some you know, some issues.
hmm
He talks at I think this was earlier before the dinner. He talks about how he's going to give her the best night of her life.
Right.
So, you know, this is a cat that's a little comfortable in the street. He's a little familiar with it, and
He's got swag. Yeah, he's got a little
trying to
swag.
swag,
hmm
and he's bringing this over and trying to he was actually trying to use it in her interest, according to the film. He was
hmm
trying to advance her career legitimately as it's portrayed.
Yeah. You notice all the men in this, even though they use her as an object, they all actually admire
Yeah,
her and her talent. Even
yeah,
him.
they did. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, Keith in the comment section raised a question about Smokey Robinson. Smokey, or at least, you know, the
They did.
portrayal was
They
at
did.
these parties
Yeah. It was at the party. They were trying to woo her to go to Motown.
to go to Motown. Yeah,
hmm
but you know, yeah, he definitely was in that space. And they later talked about how she kind of surpassed Motown in a particular way. So,
hmm
but yeah, Smokey was definitely around. They did portray him in the film a couple times. He didn't have any long scenes, but he was there a
hmm
couple times. So she leaves. Ted is managing her. She's not selling at Columbia, and I think it wasn't. I think that was the point where they were getting ready to drop her. Was that after
Yeah.
9?
In other words, they didn't have any more material. She didn't have a breakthrough hit,
Yeah.
and she was okay. And she made
Mhm.
money. She made money for them, but she was just okay.
Yeah. She
And it was
wasn't bad by any measure. She
no,
just
no, no. She's
she
she's
didn't
very
have
good.
it.
But thing that what she was singing, I think the era was changing, and
Mhm.
the taste of the music was changing, and they kind of like ran out of
Yeah.
ideas for her.
Well, and Dinah Washington told her basically that you know what you're doing is bourgeois.
hmm
It's not really connecting with the people,
Right.
and this is really your father's influence. You got to find yourself. So there's all these
Yeah.
kind of themes going on, and then she heads over. Now I can't remember how they get to Jerry Wexler. They
Oh, but what's Jerry West was found by her husband.
okay, right, okay.
Yeah.
So he gets her to Jerry Wexler. Jerry's excited about what can happen. He's bringing in some new energy that she wasn't getting from Columbia.
hmm
I think that's when they head down to Alabama, right?
Yeah.
I appreciate that support, Jay Cleveland. Says he likes the content, much appreciated. So they head down to Alabama and they have her singing with
hmm
this band
hmm
of all white boys.
Yeah. Muscle Shoals, which is they're actually a very famous band.
Yeah,
Muscle Shoals. Yeah.
no, I wasn't expecting that. I'll be honest with you. I kind of had the whole kind of Ray narrative in my head, you know, of a
Yeah.
black man, but you know, but no.
Yeah, and then it kind of shocked her husband, that was all white boys,
Mhm.
and
And he
and
was
then he
bold enough to say it. He was like, y'all ain't got no black artists in here,
yeah,
musicians in here.
Yeah, he said, well, Percy Sledge had a hit album, and he said the same thing. So, and we'll see
Mhm.
how it turned out.
Right.
And then they had that look, and he took out, the hip flask,
Right. Right. Right.
and gave it to her husband and said, okay. Then there was like a little peace treaty. Okay, we'll try it.
Hmm. Right. They did have that moment. And there was a point early on where Ted was telling her, "Nah, we can go back to Harlem. I got some guys that can play."
Mm,
And
mm.
she told him straight up, "Yeah, but none of the guys you have can play worth a damn," or something along those lines.
Yeah, they don't make hits. Yeah.
Which was interesting. So they kind of show her actually doing some production. Not just waiting to be told what to sing. She
Hmm.
actually helps with the production. They find the mood of the song, and then they create. What was it? What was the first song they did together? I'm blanking on it.
I
Um,
think I think that never loved a man. I think it
yeah,
was their
Never
first.
Loved a Man. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Never Loved a Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so sang it. The session did not end well. One of the white boys was kind of putting his arm around her and flirting, which pissed off her husband, of course.
Hmm.
They get back to the hotel room. They get into a fight over it because he wants her to withdraw altogether,
Hmm.
whereas he's saying that's the best I've ever sounded.
Hmm.
Right. And so he took that as a choosing of this white manager and this white band over his judgment. So he took it
Hmm.
personal. They're
Hmm.
arguing. It's about to get physical.
Hmm.
And then the I don't know what you would call him.
Studio manager. Yeah.
The white studio manager shows up to the hotel room.
Hmm.
And now Ted, really he started this fight. He kept needling him until they ended up
Hmm.
rolling around on the floor.
Hmm. Hmm.
So she thought the song would not come out.
Yeah. So yeah, well, that's funny because she classically closed the door on him.
Mhm. Yeah, she
Well,
went in
would
the bathroom and closed the door.
they were Ted and him were destined to fight
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
from the first time they met each other. Yeah, I'm a cracker, and I know you don't really cotton to cracker white boys. But
Mhm.
we're gonna try to get this music made. And the
Mhm.
thing is, she was supposed to overdub the vocals and finish the
Right.
vocals up to finish the
Yeah.
track. And
Mhm.
he ended the session. And I think that's how come the studio manager came over and said, "We need to finish this song."
But but just now on the entertainment level, the scene was funny. And you're
Hmm.
seeing this black man in the South who's picking a fight with
Hmm.
with this white guy who's he considers a redneck because
Hmm.
in his own way he's saying I know how y'all treat black men. So
Hmm.
there's a tension there, but the
Hmm.
film is also trying to show you how this man, her manager, her husband, is really wrecking her opportunities.
Hmm.
So even though, go ahead.
He's embarrassing her.
Well, he's embarrassing her, but he's also he's stifling her. Like I mean,
Hmm.
clearly, as good as the song sounded, anybody that would flush that down the toilet is not
Hmm.
really working in her interest. And they kind of
Hmm.
position him that way. He's hot headed. He's insecure. He's arrogant. And so they're kind of positioning him between her success and whatnot. And then, of course, he begins to physically abuse her. You start
Hmm.
to see her showing up places with black eye, and
Hmm.
I think it's not long after that she heads home. I think wasn't it? I think it was not
I
long
th-
after that scene.
yeah, it wasn't long after that because I think they were in the elevator, and I think they went up, and she came out with a black eye, and then
Right.
she shows up at her, at back home, coming
Well,
from New York.
wait a minute. Let's put it in context. She shows up to a hotel where a
Mhm.
woman walks up to her and sings her praises, thanks her for her
Yeah,
music, and said how much
right.
it speaks to her.
Yeah.
And as they are getting in the elevator, he makes a decision. I'm blanking on the decision he makes at that particular time, which she didn't like.
Hmm.
And you could see him, in a minute, they kind of showed it in the multiple clips, but he hits her in the elevator before the door fully closes.
Right.
So enough people see it to where it ends
Mhm.
up on Time magazine's cover,
Right.
right? And by the time she's on a European tour, which
Mm.
her husband initially fought, argued with Jerry Wexler about
Uh, uh,
doing.
until he found out how much money they could make, and then it
Yeah,
kind of changed his mind. Yeah.
because he was trying to put her in movies. And
Hmm.
Jerry said, well, are any of the movies going to pay her $250,000, which both embarrassed him. But at the same time, he changed up and put her on. And she was supposed to have some really heavy hitters singing with her on the tour. And he was basically getting some, what Jerry Wexler calls some amateur singers on the tour with her.
With the singers, they had the same singers as band, okay, because Muscle Shoals wasn't available again because actually had other artists that had to produce. They had their own
Yeah.
production company, so they weren't available to travel with her. And so they had a different band to go with her, and Jerry Wexler was trying to nix that. Said, I don't, you have these unknown people that want to go on this expensive tour, and I don't think we should risk it.
Yeah. Appreciate that, Gavin. To answer Troy, I don't think they finished the song. I don't think they finished it. As far as Never Loaded Man.
They didn't finish it completely because she was supposed to overdub the vocals.
Yeah.
And that's when they killed it. And then, but the thing is, they still released the song. Okay,
Right.
because she was
that was so, but that was the thing. So they were on tour. I think they were because the reporters were Dutch.
Oh yeah. Well, this came afterward, right? I think she was actually when she went home, right? And that
was that before or after the tour started.
That was before the tour started. Okay, because they had gotten into it. She had the black eye, so she shows up with her two boys back home to her dad, and her dad gave her to look like I knew you would be back. And the tension
she had a black eye.
She had a black eye. The tension was he going to refuse to let her back in?
Right.
And he didn't. He said, how long are you going to be?
Yeah.
That's all he said. So he welcomed her back and the boys and stuff like that. And they were walking. I think they're walking downtown, and he was showing her the old record production, record production room where Mother got started, right? Yeah. And they started playing her song.
Yeah.
On the radio.
She didn't even know it was released.
She didn't know it was released. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when she gets on the phone and she says because they're trying to find her, because Wexler's trying to find her because they're releasing the song.
Yeah.
And then she calls him and she says, okay, I want to come back and make more songs with you, and I want Muscle Shoals to actually be my band.
But remember, in the midst of this, while she's at home, while they're avoiding phone calls from Wexler, from her husband, from all of these various people, she's there with her kids, with her sisters, with her father, her grandmother. And in one scene, they come out and they're all dancing and singing to Respect. But Respect.
By Percy Sledge, I do believe it was. Yeah.
No, it was.
Who was it?
It was Otis Redding.
Otis Redding. Okay.
Now I didn't know. Damn it! Sorry about this. My little system is acting a fool. I didn't know Otis Redding actually sang Respect first. I found later that several people did. Now, don't get me wrong. Aretha made that hers at a particular point, but I didn't. I had never heard Otis Redding's version of that. So they're dancing, singing Otis Redding's version of Respect there at the house. So you see it kind of, introduced in a way, and it ends up being the springboard for her finding her own voice. But as you said, at that point in time, they hear the song. She finally calls Jerry Wexler back, and then it starts this European tour. She's embarrassed to find that her being abused was covered in, I think it was Time magazine, and she didn't know, so that became a tension even more so between her and her then husband, Ted. What happens after that?
I think. Weren't they up? Like they were like up in the middle of the night, and they were rehearsing the song. She started singing it, and her sisters got together and kind of. Yeah, because he gets up in the middle of the night and said, "What are you guys doing?" And she said, "We're making a hit song." Yeah, it's 3 a.m. But you know what? What I think Glenn Turman said the same thing, that was her habit. And he said one memory of her basically, it was 3 a.m. and she's up and she's looking for, and he hears the piano playing, right? And he's sitting there. She's in a rope. She's got a cigarette hanging out of her lip, right? And she's playing his music he never heard of, right? And she starts singing. And he said he started telling her to come back to bed. He said he opened his mouth. He sat down. He said, "That's when we realized my wife is Aretha Franklin."
Yeah. And he said it was some of the most beautiful music he'd ever heard. Yeah. So Ted experienced something similar, but you could tell the tensions were there. And it's not long after that before they break up. I forget what because I was interrupted the whole time I was watching. I kept getting interrupted by somebody, so I was like, "Damn it!" I kept having to rewind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When they broke up is when they went on tour. Because right after that, after the Respect, and then I think they made another song, and then they were going to actually go on. They went on this European tour, and that's when it happened um, where she got questioned by Time Magazine, and they're
Right.
saying that your husband beat you up in the elevator,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of shocked her because she hadn't read it.
Right.
And then when they get home, he says he wants to sue Time Magazine and all these other people. I'm sure your father didn't come out too well. I'm sure he wants to sue too. And he said, "How are you going to prove that
That you
that
didn't
you
hit
did
me.
hit me when you did?" And everybody
Yeah.
saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And there was
and that's
actually a point in that discussion where he actually says another man would have killed you by now.
hmm
And I'm like, what? So
where did that come from? Yeah.
yeah, but you can see the way they're kind of that they're framing him. He's trying to killing her was on the table. Like this
hmm
was something that he was so enraged that he might consider doing, and that somehow he loves her enough not to, even though other men would. It's a real kind of convoluted kind of notion. But they split at that point, and she's singing. What is that? You better think what you're trying to do to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
She's singing it live on stage, and she gets to the part where she's singing the word freedom over and over again and looking
Yeah.
at him in the audience.
Yeah.
He walks out. She goes home, packs all his stuff in trash bags, and has it taken out of her
hmm
apartment or whatever.
Her apartment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then right after that, you see her call over her other manager because
Throw
she
her
don't
back.
want to be alone. Yeah.
Brother, yeah. Who
Yeah.
she was looking at up and down right next while she's standing next to her husband. So she gets a new black tour manager, and
hmm
as soon as she kicks her husband out,
hmm
she invites him over.
hmm
The next time you really see them together, they married with a couple kids. I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, which is I don't know, is that well, that's the old concept of the village wife, right? I'm gonna replace you go from your house, my father's house to your well, basically we didn't see the other first two guys. So
Mhm.
so evidently these guys are actually replaceable because she already has two kids, probably possibly by two different men or two
Yeah.
different boys, and then she gets married and she has another couple kids by this guy, and
Hmm.
now when they split up, the next day she calls over her new manager and replaces him,
Yeah.
her old husband.
Now we got Black Uru in the crowd in the audience. So when we bring people up, I hope he's still around. But how you doing, brother? Hope you well. He says there's a version of respect from Minnie Riperton I need to hear. Now that's definitely someone I want to hear because I never knew she did one.
I didn't either.
Anyway, so she's with the second husband, and this is when they start to show her drinking heavily.
Yes.
She's argumentative. The family's trying to help her with her business, help her with her kids, help her with her overall kind of behavior. But you see her kind of starting to stumble,
Yeah.
having all kinds of issues. She's demanding to do full tours, but she has a reputation for not showing up,
Right.
and getting sued for it. And they're trying to, warn her about that, but she demands to have the tour the way she wants to. And sure enough, she's dropping dates. She's getting
Yeah.
sued.
Yeah.
She's drinking a lot more.
hmm
Yeah.
And then they have the one scene where she's on stage and she's drunk and she kind of falls out.
Passes
Yeah,
out on stage. Yeah.
passed out on stage. Yeah.
And she kind of has a come to Jesus moment after that, sitting in her house. Because her husband at that time comes to get her when she's on the floor at the
hmm
concert. And he says, I can't do this anymore. The
hmm
next time you see her, she's at home, laying in bed, alcohol bottles empty all
hmm
around her, and he's not there.
Yeah, he's not there. He's taking the kids.
He's taking the kids. So
hmm
by the time he comes back in, she's had this come to Jesus moment. She's trying to reconnect with God.
hmm
You know, appreciate that support, Charles. Thank you. And so you see her kind of really grappling with her demons, and they use
hmm
that term throughout the film. And I
Yeah.
don't think we're just talking about alcoholism either.
No. No.
You had a different outlook on the demons. Talk a little bit.
Oh. Okay. Now she goes to Jerry Wexler and she says she needs to produce this gospel album. But Jerry says gospel doesn't sell. You want to make hits, and she says I need to produce this album. And she says that either you help me produce this album, or I'll never produce another album with you at all.
Mhm.
So he relents, and that's when he says, "Okay, we might be able to make a bigger, wider thing up because I'm an atheist. I don't understand black gospel. Maybe we can actually bring in a film crew." Okay, so we got a film crew coming in to film this event, right? And so now she's really got a lot of pressure on her because she's going to produce a whole, she wants to produce the album herself. She got a film crew coming in, and she's starting to crack a little bit, right? Um, she's rehearsing, and she's really on the singers, okay?
Mhm.
And she kind of, she cracks a little bit, and she goes to sit down, and that's when James Cleveland comes to talk to her,
Mhm.
and she says she needs help. What if my demon shows up when they're in front of all these cameras, while we're doing this? And he
Mhm.
says, you said, when you have to, you've always done this. And what did I tell you when you were young? He said, I said music would save your life.
Yeah.
And he says, you can do it. And he says, your demon, that's it, which was bothering you, is really not your demon. What he says is that what's been chasing you your whole life is your pain that you never addressed, that you've been running from.
Mm.
And he's talking about the incident where she was molested. Well, that same incident near the beginning of the film where she's actually molested at 10. And
Mhm.
that is what he's talking about. He's not so the demon that throughout the whole film that's been dogging her through the whole film is basically that incident, or they're
Mhm.
portraying it as that incident. And
That
that's when
stuck with her
that's where
for
they
her
tie.
life.
Yeah. And he said you need to give that pain to God. Okay.
Now, the interesting thing about that, though, is again, we talked about how they fabricated the molestation scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now they're doubling down on it by suggesting how much it impacted her. And
Mm-hmm.
in my comment section on Facebook about this film, there was a couple of people that came through and said, "Well, we know black men, especially at that time, molested girls anyway, so it's okay." It's okay that they're portraying it, even though we don't really know if it happened. And then some people say, well, we don't know if it happened to her. It happened to a lot of black women, so it probably did happen. And that was sufficient for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people for a scene or a series of scenes like this in different movies where
Mm-hmm.
that's justifiable. And yet, outside of Antoine Fisher, I can't think of too many movies that I've seen that actually showcases how often black boys have been
Mm-hmm.
sexually molested and abused, at extremely young ages. It's ridiculous to me. But anyway, now obviously we're skipping parts. We're trying to create a narrative for you, but we're not going through every exact thing. But there
Mm-hmm.
was a moment where she's with her second husband of the film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to figure out a way to help her with her demons.
Mm-hmm.
He now the way they're portraying it, he's actually a good dude. He's doing
Mm-hmm.
everything he can. He's not cheating on her. He's not
Yeah.
abusing her. It's interesting we have to say that.
Worships the ground she walks on.
He worships the ground she walks on, but I'm saying it's interesting we have to say he's a good dude. And the reason we know he's a good dude is because he doesn't beat her or cheat on her. Because that's the way
Mm-hmm.
black men are often portrayed, especially in these kind of films. But he's doing everything he seems to be able to. And at one point he's on his knees, massaging her feet, begging to find out how he can get her to trust him
Mm-hmm.
because she's treating him in a way that doesn't seem reflective of the kind of man he is. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
that I think has to do with the fact that she's still dealing with Ted, whatnot. And he might have been a rebound, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a point where he's trying to get her to calm down, and she's trying to, she's irritated. She's, he's getting on her nerves, and she
Mm-hmm.
turns over and elbows him in the nose,
Yeah.
point where he's bleeding. And
Mm-hmm.
they portray it like an accident. She gets up and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And I was looking at that and I said, I'm not sure if they would show if she was actually abusive in a film. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Uh,
You tell me what you saw in that scene.
Klingon mating strategy. The one guy the one guy that is not decent to her, the one guy that is worshiping her, and he's the one that catches the most mistreatment because she
Yeah,
would never do that to Ted. She'd never do that to her father.
right.
I remember that there was a scene where her father slapped her in, the scene where their father slapped her in Columbia Studios in front of the
Yeah, yeah.
in front of the production manager,
Hmm. Yeah. John Hamm
and yeah, and she straightened herself up, and
apologized for being late
yeah.
and went on to do what she had to do after that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But in this instance, but it was strange the way they showed it, because they clearly wanted to double down on the fact that it was some kind of a mistake. But it was like, why would you,
Well, you throw an elbow. Yeah.
yeah, why would you even show that, and why would it be an elbow? So he's
Yeah.
bleeding.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Especially when he's trying to comfort her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's not long after that she performs and falls out on stage. So when he says, "I'm tired of this, I'm done with this," it also came after that. So now one of the other things we also missed is when she has her coming to Jesus moment, it also comes in the form of her mother. So her mother kind of shows up to comfort her. And her mother's played by Audra McDonald, who plays Barbara. And she comes in to comfort her in that moment to help her kind of, find herself, so to speak. And that's when her, husband come home, and she decides that she wants to reconnect. I think she goes back to see she go back to see the family before the gospel album.
No, I think they came out. They came out.
Right,
They came out the lockdown. Yeah, father and sisters came out.
Now, mind you, when they do show the father, he's got a new wife, or at least I don't know if it's a girlfriend or a wife.
I think, yeah, the thing is that that's not his wife because he's still married on paper, so he can't marry her.
Yeah, but the mother's dead though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. The mother is dead, but he won't. He doesn't marry her.
He doesn't.
They complain that he doesn't marry her.
So they complain that he doesn't marry her, but the thing they really make an effort to show is how absolutely horrible he is to her. She's trying to bring him plates of food. She's offering to comfort him. She's doing, and everything she does, he rebukes her. He yells at her out of nowhere. So they're really trying to show. And again, they're really kind of highlighting the same thing, about black men.
Yeah.
Now you have a break from that with the second husband. Who I want to say it might be, I think it's Albert Jones is the actor, and it was Ken Cunningham, that might have been him. But you did have a break from that. But other than her sons, which you don't really hear much from, that's the only male that isn't trying to do something to her. That's the which is a break from the Color Purple dynamic, where there are no positive men whatsoever. There is this one representation where he's clearly they're not connecting, even though he's doing all he can. But short of that, pretty much every other male, especially black male in the film, except for James, I say James Cleveland.
But he's gay, so James Cleveland is gay.
Yeah. Okay.
And they show that at the very beginning of the film when she's in the party, and and James Cleveland and what I think the other guy was actually grabbing each other's butt.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. So the only heterosexual black male in the film that's not trying to abuse her, oppress her, or exploit her is like her second husband, and she actually abuses him. But they treat it like an accident.
Yeah.
But anyway, but she is cold. She's remote, and she doesn't allow him to really connect with her. And that's kind of one of the only saving grace. Now the father comes to see her in the final performance of the film, where she's recording this gospel album, which is also supposed to come with a biography that Jerry Wexler suggests that she likes. And as BGS said earlier on, that biography didn't come out until very recently. But she wanted her audience to know, what music, what the tradition was she was connected to. She wanted them to see that, and since that was what she was returning to in her own life, she needed that to kind of connect with the work she was doing. So the father comes out to see her give this performance in the church, and they kind of go from there. Is there anything else you wanted to jump into? Anything we missed you wanted to?
No, we touched on the most of the important parts.
Yeah.
But like I said, it kind of a lot of this reminded me of What's Love Got to Do with It, with Tina Turner. A lot of this kind of reminded me of that movie.
Yeah.
About the violence and the domineering the domineering thing, and then the absent mother, because Tina Turner's mother left her with her grandmother when she was young. So
Cortez says same as the Madam C.J. Walker movie. Well, it's a little different. The end of the C.J. Walker movie, Madam C.J. Walker movie, you have this, and they do this a lot with films. You have this all black women Shangri-La heavenly kind of living situation. Basically, black women are all connected, and they really get to experience heaven when they no longer have to deal with niggas.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of theme you get in movies like that. With this one, her father's still there.
Mm-hmm.
James Cleveland is still there, so there's still, there's a little more allowance for a male presence.
Yeah. But you remember at the end when her father gave her a praise, like you exceeded my expectations, and you could do anything, and and which is what all little girls want to hear the fathers. From the fathers, okay, you're amazing, you're fantastic. Kind of saw that with believe it or not, kind of reminds me of the Masters of the Universe series that came out with Man of Arms and Tila.
Yeah, that fatherly affirmation,
the fatherly worship of the daughter.
Worship. I would definitely say that was the case. Absolutely. I'm gonna put the link. I'm gonna put the link in the chat. So y'all can come up as we kind of talk about this a little more. But there definitely is that praise, right? You definitely see that.
Wait a minute. T-Rex says Reverend Cleveland is gay. Come on, man. And there's when I was young, when I heard about Reverend Cleveland and Billy Preston, way back then. So if you don't know that Reverend Cleveland is gay, probably one of the gayest churches in LA.
We messed that up for him. All right. Brother Malika, what's up, man?
Peace, brothers. How you doing?
Good,
peace
man.
and love, BGS. How you doing, Master Teacher?
Pretty good. Got an echo, man. Where we get the echo from?
I got an echo.
Okay, that's better. All right.
Okay.
Now, I see Blade Runner in the comments and mentioning Glenn Turner. They didn't show the marriage with Glenn.
No, they didn't. It was basically the marriage with Glenn came in the 80s, okay, and this stops in 1972 with Amazing Grace.
So there's a lot. I mean, that they didn't really show.
Yeah, the movie was long enough as it is.
Okay, so we got Ian up here. What's up, man?
Peace, God. What's going on?
And did you see the movie, Ian?
No, you guys did enough, man. I run down.
I mean, it's a long movie, man. Like almost 2.5 hours.
But is it entertaining though? You know what I'm saying? Because it's almost sounds like a chick flick in a lot of ways.
I think I told Doc that it's reminded me of a long made-for-TV movie.
Okay.
Kind of had that feel.
Let me see. Now we got Chronicles of Pookie. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Okay.
Can you? Because he dropped out, so he might be having some sound issues. Can you hear us?
No, he's got connection issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
You sound like you Aquaman right now.
Yeah. See if you can clean it up and come back through, man. So yeah, but that's why I was saying earlier. To me, it was reminiscent of those kind of TV movies about some of the artists we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years. TLC, Salt and Pepper.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. These, and they all have the same running theme.
Yeah,
Black women would be happy and successful if they didn't have to deal with heterosexual black men.
Yeah, but they can't stay away from them. So
exactly.
Yeah, but that's kind of what you see.
Well, that's the only. If there's no tension between black women and black men, they notice that black women are not going to buy it.
But when you watch the scene where she's with the what's the white band called again? What's the name?
Wexler?
No, the white band.
Oh, Muscle Shoals. Yeah,
Muscle Shoals. There's even an underlying kind of theme there where things with them would have even been better if Ted wasn't there. You know what I mean? Like, this dynamic where black women would connect with each other better if black men weren't there, but even black women and white men would work better if these black men just didn't keep messing it up. There was a point where she was performing, I think it was what's that song? Ain't no way.
Ain't no way.
Yeah, she's singing the song for the first time, trying to get a feel for it. And she and the woman who sang it, to kind of introduce her to how it was supposed to sound, they're all holding hands, like three sisters. They're holding hands and they're connected. And Ted walks up and disrupts them holding hands and takes her hand and then sits in front of the camera and
Oh, yeah.
narrates,
Yeah.
So even symbolically, you get this moment where again,
Yeah.
black men are disrupting this.
The black male ego is so big.
Well, it's
You know what?
and insecure that he's
Yeah.
disrupting the natural bond between women. This is the kind of
Yeah.
theme they play
Yeah.
off.
You know what other movie they did? They kind of did that too. The movie that came out in the 70s, Lady Sings the Blues. Because I remember
Oh, yeah.
seeing it with my mom when it used to come on like ABC. And I noticed that Billy D. Williams' character, who was Billie Holiday's manager at the time, and he was like kind of like Marlon Wayne's character, street dude.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it was kind of like he was like this impending force around her. He was like you said, that controlling, that image that he's this defiant, just that supposedly that male patriarchal force. And I remember how the way it's portrayed, and I said, why is Billy D. Williams British, good-looking, great guy? Why is he this?
Okay, now hold on. Both of you guys are kind of borging out. So both of you. So Malika and Chronicles of Pookie, we're not hearing either one of you clearly.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like it was the duality of Billy D. Williams being this very charming, good-looking, beautiful man, but at the same time being evil, kind of like your typical superhero villain, And I was just like, that was crazy. But then it got on. I said, oh, this is how the way he's supposed to be characterized, and how the way you have these black female protagonists, and especially with entertainers.
Mm-hmm.
That
where they have that real irresistible bad boy.
Yeah,
that they love, and they have to overcome.
Yeah,
and you rarely see this in a lot of white shows or white movies. You didn't see this in The Coal Miner's Daughter. You didn't see this in Selena. You didn't see this and stuff. But in our community, if there's a black man in their life, and I'm not saying that all of us are perfect, but they have to put us up there as their prototypical villain.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, well, damn. And that's why I didn't want to see this movie, because when I saw Marlon Wayans and he's next to her, I said, I bet you Marlon Wayans is playing the evil husband, the evil black husband, with the quotes around it. And when you guys start talking about it, I'm like, ain't this a bitch? And it's just, and it kind of gets me that this is the tropes that we keep going on, and how the way the tropes that you were talking about, she has to be the defiant woman to find herself. And not saying that she's perfect, they show the bouts of alcoholism, the bouts of, being free and sexual, but also the problems that she's going through. But also, like how you said, she has to be defiant against her father, but the father has to come to her and says, I respect you and I love you because you found your way. And like how you said, it's not the father just respecting her and loving her, but the father worshiping her.
Yeah.
Well, and something to keep in mind, there is a moment, and I want to say this might have happened similarly to Lady Sings the Blues. I could swear there was a moment where Billy D comes back and her life is in shambles.
Yeah.
And you kind of see that as domineering as they wanted to present him, she wouldn't have gone that far off track if he was still in her life. You saw something similar to that with this film when she comes back home to her father. You know what I mean? And you get the impression this is not the first time. She got these two kids that come out of nowhere, but this kind of sense that her father brought order. Her father brought order of some sort.
Yeah.
Now,
listen, I'm laughing, man, because you see the kids came out of nowhere.
Yeah, they really did.
They really did.
Yeah, they really did. And with no explanation.
Like the Immaculate Conception. Like, she just had two kids.
Yeah.
We ain't going to explain that. She just got two kids.
They never explained it.
Ian knows he kills me with that because I love his laugh, man. He gets But now I got to shout out T-Rex in the comments. He asked the question, who directed this film? Now, this may help. So why don't we take a look at something real quick? So this is the director of the film. This is Lizelle Tommy.
Okay.
So apparently Lizelle directed Respect, Jessica Jones, and
That
The
makes
Walking
sense.
Dead.
Yeah.
Right? This is one of the writers, Callie Corey.
Put up the LGBT black lady.
Oh, shall I do that? Okay. And this is the third writer, Tracy Scott Wilson. Now, this is what I was telling you before, BGS. Tracy is one of those names that can go either way. And when I was on the IMDb site, look, see, now when you go, you see, this is the actual page for Respect. And when you click on Tracy's name, this is what you get.
No picture, huh?
Right. So I said, Tracy's one of those names. Look at the middle name, Scott. Tracy Scott. That could very well be a dude. And sometimes, women writers use initials, so it could have just said T Scott. It would have been just as ambiguous.
Or mother's maiden last name.
Yeah. But this is what you get. She graduated from Rutgers.
Rutgers.
So you can kind of see, you can see where this is going. And when I talk about the consistent tension with black males as the problem, as the disruption in her life, this film just adds another element to it. So now it's not a boyfriend; it's both her husband, it's her father. And and really, even the white men in the film, Jerry Wexler, Columbia, they're all kind of oppressive. They're all kind of hampering her vision. And if they would just get out of the way, she would be free. That's the kind of subtle subtext to a lot of these films, including this one.
So BGS, what's going on at what kind of folks is coming out of Rutgers?
Basically, it's when it said Rutgers, near Ivy League, feminists.
Well, you got Brittany Cooper.
There you go. She's an alumni from Rutgers.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's right across the bridge from me in Philadelphia.
The bourgeoisie feminists.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of Rutgers, okay, that makes us a black LGBTQ feminist out of Rutgers. Okay, you already know what it is.
Right. So the misandry, and this is one of the things we talk about regularly. We're talking about the misandry that's really being passed down through media, multi-generationally. Right. This is a story about a woman in the 60s and 70s, and it's being translated to yet another generation. And so you have young girls and boys, for that matter, taking in this story and absorbing the misandry of the story as normal. You know what I mean? The misandry is part of the story for that generation. I mean, think about, when I first saw The Color Purple, I didn't know how to separate the misandry from the entertainment, from the production, from the story. I mean, I'd watched Whoopi Goldberg do stand-up. I liked her as a comedian. I didn't know how to separate all those different things as a kid. They just all, I just felt this discomfort, but I couldn't articulate why. And I think you have the same kind of thing happening with these films. And it would be one thing if it was just the one film. But again, when you start seeing them as a procession of films on female artists and whatever, then you start to see this repetitive story that seems to underline the idea that black men are black women's biggest issue and problem.
That's how they did Harriet. They did Harriet Tubman the same way.
Yeah, they had to invent a black character to be in opposition,
which they did here.
Yeah,
and so that's one of the main consistent features as well. They invented a black male molester. She got pregnant by a classmate who was 3 years old. And let's also keep in mind, look, my great grandmother-in-law, right, my wife's grandmother, she was married at 13 to a man in his late 20s. And this was in the first third of this was early in the 20th century. Well, early. It's probably, I want to say maybe the 50s. Look, but my point is, this kind of stuff was happening in the South in particular. It wasn't wholly a strange thing. These kind of things took place. By today's sensibilities, this is highly problematic. But at the time, these kind of things weren't. But in these kind of films, what we get is, black men are these patriarchs that want to oppress us. They want to kill us. They want to abuse us at every turn. And if we could just be free of them, we can be free in general.
Well, what's the problematic aspect that where there's no context given when a lot of these Black women are given a rundown of their oppressive life today versus similarly compared to the oppressive life of women before, where you mentioned 13. Well, when you're living in a different age of industrialization and when you still have work, being king and so on and so forth, the age so much is a very nuanced factor. You know what I'm saying? It's not the same where people have all day every day to ponder the realities of life. And I'm like, oh, I'm only 13. You know what I'm saying? No,
Mm.
back then, if you didn't work, you know what I'm saying, at 9 years old, you know what I'm saying? If you didn't work, you might not live. So understand, if you're living in a world where work at a young age meant life or death, understand you're not too old to marry. You understand what I'm saying? If you're not too old for your labor at that young age to matter whether or not you live, you're not too old to marry. You understand what I'm saying? So it's a whole nother psychological comparative that we have to make.
I just wanted to highlight how creating fictitious black male monsters is somewhat of a trope at this point that doesn't seem like it's going anywhere.
Can I
Right.
read you something, gentlemen?
Mm-hmm.
Black feminist propaganda porn, a term that specifies the degrading and emasculation of Black men in popular media. It also personifies a vilified and malicious image of Black men while promoting the Black woman's image as strong, independent, equal, smarter, as well as the victim of racism and Black patriarchy, which in the end, the Black female is the victor or heroine to create a pseudo and delusional air of superiority and control over their men. You can use that, Doc.
Yeah. You need to, you know what? You paste that in the private chat and whatever, official name you want me, because I will be citing you, sir. Yeah,
You've used that too, BGS.
But
Okay.
let me add this too. So with that, what I said is that you had Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was like 22 years old, and he was like a 20, early 20s. He was like a international leader. So this age of appropriate BS that they're trying to pull, and they're trying to ponder off as more than it is. They're not really going by the historical understanding of what life was. That's just like now you say a 19-year-old is a kid. Back at a certain point, you had 19-year-olds going to war, shooting and shooting people's heads off.
Right.
These were grown men. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Compared to boys now. So that 13-year-old you're talking about back then, that's a whole nother comparative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me see. Okay, we got someone else coming through. It doesn't look like they're coming through. Well, okay.
They're not connecting, huh?
Not connecting. There we go. Is it Javon or Javon?
It's Javon.
Javon? Oh, you
Yeah,
bored?
he's driving.
Yeah, it's Javon. It's Javon.
Javon, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good. How y'all doing, brother?
You good? Give us your thoughts on this.
Yeah, because you got driving noise. So yeah, go ahead and speak up.
I'm at work. I'm at work. It's
okay.
Events everywhere. That's all it is. Yeah. But no, I mean, it's hard being a black man. That's pretty much all I can say. I mean, it's pretty much like you say, stereotypes and the tropes. They don't get old.
Well, if they don't,
they continue to just.
If there's no tension between black men and women, if there's no tension between black men and women, black women will not buy it. Okay. if you have an all-female cast, you
Yeah,
have all-female empowerment, they will not buy it. There's got to be some kind of tension between black men and black women, otherwise they won't buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah.
But
It's like they have
what it
no
is,
faith that black men are just they have no inherent like goodness in them. Like we're all just bad and want to do hurt and harm. So black women,
The
that's
thing,
not the case.
with black women, there has to be, they in their mind, the only thing exciting for them in any encounter is basically them having tension between them, between men and between black men and black women. So there's no tension unless you're doing unless you're doing some kind of a superhero flick. If just it can't be a straight biopic where they're overcoming the other kind of odds, like getting a contract or singing or something like that. Nothing like that. There's got to be tension between that man and that woman for black women to actually buy it.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, but see, my issue is that I mean, and I've been saying this even about superhero flicks because I'm gonna go in on Shang probably tomorrow. This shit. What I'm saying though,
what's wrong with Shang-Chi?
well, see, here's the thing. There was a point where you could showcase the capacities of a woman, and it didn't necessarily have to be done in a manner where she has to be better than every male in the room, right? So we've gone from, if you look at if you go from the Jamie Lee Curtis, Sigourney Weaver, late 70s, early 80s heroine figure, she had to figure shit out. There wasn't a guarantee she was going to win just because she was a woman. Like, she had to go through a process. But then by the time you get to the 2000s, what they begin to double down on is what I consider female superiority, right? Where she's smarter, better, more moral, more capable, just because. No training, no significant development. She's just, this what we call the Mary Sue kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
This really takes sway in more ways than one. And I think that's, a lot of what we're starting to see now. And it's become very normalized. It's an expectation. And it goes back to, as Gigi has pointed out a long time ago, these are Victorian ideas. They go back centuries about the inherent goodness of women. And so in contrast to that, going back to BGS's point about contrast, it must be now that men have to be bad. Women have to be smarter. Men have to be dumber. Women have to be more inherently pure. Men have to be more inherently evil. And you have this unnecessary Manichaean binary that didn't always have to exist. You could, again, if you go back and watch the first Halloween, the first Alien, they didn't have to be better just because they were women, and the men had to be bad because they were men. It was just a story, and things happened, and you had this heroine who figured her way out through a scenario. You don't really have that anymore.
But what was one of my favorite movies was Cujo. Now you had that was a heroine in that movie, but she was on 10, between 1 and 10, she was on 10 scared the whole time. But you still saw her as a heroic figure,
And she had to figure out her way through the situation. And save her son. Right. So I don't think we have a lot of that. So, again, it's a low boiling kind of narrative of, black men constantly kind of wrecking Aretha's flow. And there were some moments where you see her contributing to it herself. But throughout the film, the majority of the problems tend to come from men.
But the Victorian aspect that you bring up, what women are not saying is that Victorian ideal of goodness, of female goodness, is a classist thing. It's not really a gender thing. It's a class thing before it ever was a gender thing. You understand what I'm saying? And they're not being genuine when they're putting forth these ideals. So when they're putting forth these ideals, they're really saying that you're black man, you're a nigger with the R, and I'm almost white. Basically, is what they're saying.
Okay. Now we got in two more. We got I don't know if it's Joel or Joel, and we got Brother Black Uru. So let's start with Joel. So we go in order. Any thoughts about this?
Hey, I'm working too, so hopefully y'all can hear me.
Yeah, go ahead.
But let me start by saying thank you, Dr. T, for having this platform. Because me personally, I would not watch these dumpster fires of movies. And ever since this new wave of this new age feminism, it's movies have not been the same. Everything's been propaganda, everything on TV, all that. So let me just say thank you for subjecting yourself to this, and anyone else who wants to watch this and digest this stuff. So I will be starting my own YouTube channel, and I might have to subject myself to some of this too. But for now, I just stay away from it. But from what you guys are saying about this movie, it's exactly what is to be expected. But I would like to ask a question though.
Mm-hmm.
And I have my own theory on this, but I want to ask you fellas a question, and that question being, why do y'all think these white feminists like doing so much of this propaganda and this poking and pushing this narrative on black women? Because for the majority now, don't get me wrong, there are going to be black women that contribute, but from what I can tell, there's almost always some white woman that literally makes this happen.
Damn.
There's a line in Zora Neale Hurston's book at the very end says the two freest people in America are white men and black women because they do what they want, right? And it is actually reiterated, I think, in what was the name of the movie? Was it something country? I think the series. Can't remember the name.
I'm not talking about Lackawanna Blues.
No.
Lovecraft Country.
Oh,
Lovecraft
Lovecraft
Country.
Country. Okay.
And when the white woman said we both want what the other has, right? And white women really really want to have the same kind of freedom to do what they want that black women have in their respective cultures. White women are actually very constrained inside their culture, and the only way they can go ahead.
It's much easier for white women to exact their ultra misandrous views using black women as a proxy. They basically have been engaged in a proxy war, utilizing black women as their weapon and using black men as the foe.
Now hold on, Guru. I'm coming. The reason I'm letting Joel go first is because I'm gonna give you the floor. So you can't be dropping these little statements. They always need. So just give me a second. We go. Well, go ahead, BGS.
Yeah, hold your water, Black. But yeah, but that is true. They are you. They always have. They used to. You go back to Ain't I a Woman with what's her name, right? They always use black women as a proxy. They always have.
But to some degree with that, in response to that, because he said, you said the freest people are white men and black women, and then and white women want to be that. So in response to that, understand the white woman, she knows that she can never be that because she's holding down white supremacy. She knows if she becomes free, she loses her class,
her protection.
Yes.
She wants to enjoy the privileges of white supremacy. She likes the performance in the family that black women are able to do. Yet she only will go so far, because we know at the end of the day, even these extreme feminists, they still would get married. You know what I mean? They still so she likes the performance of black women, but she's only going to go so far because she's not about to tear up her family about this idea. Black community is a whole different idea, so they get to do it. She sees the fallout of it, and really our community has been devastated by it. I'm personally of the ilk that thinks that feminism was one of the major features that disrupted the civil rights and black power movements.
Of course.
From within.
You know what I realized though, what you just said there, Doc? White feminists will deal with the BS, but they will not jeopardize their level of white privilege. But black women will jeopardize everything just to have the ideology and to be on the level of Miss Ann.
Man, they'll jeopardize everything for sure.
Yeah,
they'll put their own head under the chopping block and test fate. See if they can pull it out before the guillotine comes down. You know what I'm saying? Like a
Uh,
game or something.
well, let me bring this good brother through. Now, Joel, did we answer your question?
Yeah. Well, my theory was they're pretty much like lab rats. And of course, there's narrative where, of course, it's good for business. You want to separate the men from the women. There's that whole narrative where capitalism. But when it comes to these white feminists, it's like black women, like you guys have said, is like they're in a position where they are running their their community. The women are running the community, but it's failing. So now these white feminists, they're still trying to push the agenda, but they're trying to pump as much money into it. It's like pumping air into a tire with a nail in it. And they're trying to make it work, but it just keeps failing. And it's like, if this doesn't work out, it'll disprove pretty much everything they've been trying to accomplish.
Okay, I hear you.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and bring this brother in, Mr. Hammer, Mr. Black Uru. Go ahead and bring your hammer in, sir. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Doc? Thanks for having me up. Thanks for the build up. I doubt I'll be worthy of it.
Here you go.
And I should say, I have not seen the mockumentary. That's what I'm going to refer to it.
Okay.
About Aretha
memory.
I mean, you can kind of see the things coming that you guys describe, you and BGS very eloquently described. So I will rely on your august understanding and interpretations of things, and sort of meekly avoid observing that particular whatever it is. But it's interesting. You mentioned the Alien movie and the Halloween movie, and the contrasting how those movies were written, how the women were featured, the heroines were featured in those movies, versus how they are today. And I agree in general, but you had a white woman wiping out aliens, right? And you had this other white woman, the alien wiped out a whole battalion of space Marines, but then
He's talking about the second one, yeah.
right, but then she goes back after the queen alien, and which is surrounded by hundreds of the spawn of this super gigantic queen alien to rescue, of course, the little blonde white girl, and she miraculously escapes and drags the only surviving wounded Marine to stay. So I mean, they've been on some bullshit for a while, Doc, in Hollywood. But the difference now is the crackpot, as you guys alluded to earlier, coming out of Rutgers or these places, have totally taken over now. I mean, before you would have maybe people, mostly men, mostly white men, who may have been classically trained, and you have sort of the general sort of classical perspective about male and female relationships and history and such like that. So it wouldn't be so far gone from any sort of logic about how men and women have been and generally always will be. And now you have the people that you showed earlier who are essentially running Hollywood. And obviously they're running amok. So, this is what we're going to see, and it's only unfortunately going to get even worse.
Let me add something. You raised the issue of aliens, and you were talking about Aliens 2, where she goes back in, especially for the little white girl, right? Or the little daughter figure against this big black alien. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see the Tomorrow War.
I saw that.
Yeah, I saw that.
What you're noticing,
I liked it. Okay, tell me what's wrong with it.
Well, no, I mean, I'm schizophrenic about a lot of this stuff. I learned to enjoy it and then have problems with it at the same time because
he better.
I'm sitting in the
otherwise you're gonna have to stay away.
You ain't gonna be able to watch much.
Exactly. You see all this just sci-fi stuff. Like, so I I'm yelling in the theater and I'm pissed at the same time. But
I'm with you too, man.
When you see these movies, a lot of what we're seeing out of some of these movies is really what I consider more like competing matriarchies, right?
Yeah.
You have Ripley representing this white woman in the white community, and she's going after the white daughter. She's going after the white Marine. And when you look at Tomorrow War, you notice the same kind of thing, right? Chris Pratt's daughter is up against the queen, so they're dealing with these narratives of competing matriarchies. So the question
but the one great male hero in the Alien franchise, ironically, was Charles Dutton's character in the third Alien movie, if you recall.
But
he was the only great masculine hero in that whole franchise.
Well, what happens to the men?
Well, of course, they all get killed.
Yeah.
Come on.
Like you fit Kodo in the first one. They're
exactly.
all
You have competing matriarchies where white women still win out. It is what it is. So I'm not saying that these films are the perfect example of everything, but I am saying in terms of an individual woman character in a film, instead of them just walking in the room and everything falls at their feet because they're there, they actually have to work through problems. Like every movie, Ripley has to work through problems. And by the time she gets to that one with Charles Dutton, she done gone through hell. As a matter of fact, she doesn't really survive it.
No, she doesn't.
Survive. Yeah. But I'm just saying, compared to a lot of the films we're seeing now, where you have these, these faultless female characters that really know everything, that everybody is beneath them, this kind of dynamic.
Yeah. And you know what else is funny? You see the men who go through their hero's journey turn over the power to the women that seem to you've seen in the last Avengers movie. Thor turns over his kingship to Valkyrie.
Yes.
And I'm cursing. I'm like, what the hell?
Yes.
And I'm like, wait a minute. Vikings never would turn their power over to a woman. And he has to go on some type of vision quest to outer space with the Guardians of the Galaxy to find himself. I'm like, what the hell? And you're looking at it as this no, and then it kind of goes in conjunction with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and I'm like, you're just showing men losing their balls today, man. No backbone, just everything.
Well, hold on, man. Shout out to Big Discussion 76. What's up, Doc? He's in the house.
What's up, Doc?
You're welcome to come on up. The link is in the chat. But no, you're definitely right. And this turning over, and here's the thing: you can find it in everything from, like you said, Avengers to I think the Cars 3 movie. I took my son to see Cars 3.
I heard you talked about that.
And I'm reintroducing all of these strange examples is because that's how prevalent it is. It's this whole idea that patriarchy has caused the world every problem, and men need to just hand over their power to women, and women are going to do it better simply because they're women. And this idea that all men are the same. And so when we come up and we're saying, well, first of all, black men are not white men, that's actually something we have to argue. That's actually something we have to argue because we're not white men. So this idea of black women having to take power from black men, as you see in a lot of these films, including Aretha, it's like you're trying to frame this narrative, but none of these men are in a position to do that. But anyway.
Well, I got a question. Now, I have a daughter. Now, BGS, you got a daughter. What do you feel about handing over because you don't know what your son is going, how your son is going to end up, not you know what I'm saying, if you see promise in your female offspring, do you try to give her the keys to the kingdom? Okay,
I'll try to give her the keys to the kingdom. If when it comes to children, the most qualified person gets the keys to the kingdom, whether it's male or female, especially in the black community. You try to push the boy into doing it, but that's if you look, that's been prominent. Go look at the crown in England, right? You give it to the best candidate. But the thing is, I don't think that's what Doc is talking about. I think what he's talking about is that women are getting it unearned. That they haven't gone through the same thing. They haven't proven that they're the best candidate. They're just handing over the keys to the kingdom just because they're female.
So they haven't gone through the hero's journey.
They haven't gone through the hero's journey. They haven't proved that they're the best candidate.
They just picked up a lightsaber and they knew the Force already. And
and
Yoda walks through and says, "Well, there's nothing we can teach her. She knows everything."
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think women lack the evolutionary conscious of manhood. And when I say there's a whole lot of men being eaten by saber-toothed tigers and bears and whatever to get us to this point.
Yeah. What I think is more. You got daughters. I think it's much more simpler than that, right? A boy has to become a man, right? Through a whole lot of trials, tribulations, stuff like that. A woman just wakes up one day and her period starts. She becomes a woman.
That's kind of like what Patrice O'Neill said. He says men have to do everything. They have to be charming. They have to have their money right. They have to look good, smell good in order for women want to be attracted to him. He says, but what do women have to do? Just show up.
Sure. Yeah. They do. Just one day they awaken, just like the Force Awakens. One day they awaken to their power. When a girl goes from one day wakes up and she's bleeding, she's a woman. There's no question about whether she has to grow up or prove anything, go through any kind of trials, nothing. Right now, she has to learn how to handle her power. Because one day she's a nobody, and then at 13 years old she's a superstar.
Right.
Whereas with men, and y'all gonna see this if you watch Shang-Chi, you go through years of torturous struggle to go through your hero's journey. And even if you feel yourself to be, powerful internally, it doesn't matter until you impose it on the world. It doesn't matter until you change your outside environment in some demonstrable way. You're not powerful because you wake up feeling powerful. You're powerful when the community regards you as such because of what you have accomplished in its interest. You know what I'm saying? And that's the difference. That's the difference.
But the black woman feels that she has power because she can wield it in the home. She doesn't need to go out. She says, because I can control this home front environment, I'm masters of the universe.
Yeah.
But they're barely doing that though. That's the crazy thing. Not even doing that. So what were we talking about?
Well, that's your generation, but the thing is that's the way they're taught.
Exactly. And they don't realize it's pseudo control and pseudo power, because soon as they step out of the community, because a lot of our black women go into jobs which are controlled by white people, and they realize they still have to bow down to another form of power and superiority. But what makes them feel powerful is when they come back into our community and they can have power over their men and their children. So it's pseudo power. It's you ever notice it's
power.
Exactly. You ever notice like when they come out of the community, it's like coming out of a force field. And then when they go into the to the workplaces, they're going into another force field, which is like, okay, here's another different type of power what they got to deal with. So when they come back into the community, they re-up and they can go and do all the power and do whatever they have, they can push upon us. So like how BGS and Dr. T says, that proxy power, it's that pseudo power. They don't really have it. It's like they're holding it. It's kind of like in Shang-Chi, Dr. T, it's like the rings, the 10, like black women's power, like the 10 rings in Shang-Chi.
Go ahead.
That's from elsewhere. Yeah. It's from elsewhere. It's something they can wield, but they didn't create it. It was given, it was essentially given to them. And, and that's what we witness. And growing up with it, we experience it. But this is something that many girls learn growing up. They learn that this power is going to be available to them to use over men. And we grapple with this whole idea because we as men, even as boys, learn that we're not going to be able to have that. And there's nothing that's going to be given to us. Everything we have is going to have to be taken. So when we noticed in the last year right? I don't, whatever your thoughts about COVID is, whatever. But when you look at the pandemic economy, and when you look at the resources that are starting to be withdrawn, even though Black men are on the receiving end more than anybody else, like you really didn't see us in the streets protesting and complaining. You didn't see, because for us it was par for the course. And for us, there wasn't a significant difference between a year ago and now, 2 years ago and now. It was the same basic dynamic. Nobody, I rarely hear Black men say, you know what, I didn't get a check from the government. You know what I mean? There was no expectation that you would be supported.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's waiting. Black men are not waiting for anyone to knock on their door or extend resources to them unearned. It's not, because that's not how we're socialized.
Mm-hmm.
We know nobody's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time we hit this world event, it's not new for us.
Did you ever hear about the story? I posted this on Facebook maybe a year or two ago, but about the guy who climbed on the outside of the building. His mom was inside. There was a fire in the building. He climbed on the outside of the burning building with a broken hip, mind you. To get to his mother to see if she was okay because she didn't get out in the fire.
Wow. No. Yeah. I heard about the Black man that broke into a burning house to get his 2 kids out of the basement.
Right.
No, this guy had a broken hip and just was like, okay, broken hip. He just dismissed the pain and was like, okay, my mama's still in there. Wow. The firefighter, I mean, he was like, fuck the firefighters. I need to go see my mama. She's not out yet.
Look, I'm gonna tell you, as somebody that needs a hip replacement, let me tell you something. You don't realize how valuable any part of your body is until you can't use it.
Mm-hmm.
And the hip is the functional point of movement. It's just up under the back in terms of importance. It's incredibly important for movement in any capacity. So if you're telling me this cat had a broken hip and was going to, man, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and welcome Afro Nerd. What's up, man?
Hey, Doc. How you doing?
I'm sorry I kept you down. It looked like you weren't connected, so I didn't think you were, but that's good to have you.
Yeah, speak up a little bit. We can barely hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
A little bit better, but still kind of low.
How about now?
That's a lot better.
Okay. Gentlemen, good evening. And Doc, I appreciated that you came through our show a few months ago. And a lot of our listeners have been requesting you back. So hopefully we'll be able to work something out.
Sure.
Wow, what can I say? First of all, again, just a much appreciation for you putting this together, this platform just on GP. And listening to it, it's like a breath of fresh air. So many of us, I hear the passion and the venting, and I get it. But I also saw Shang-Chi. I pronounced it Shang-Chi for like 40 years, but nevertheless, Shang-Chi, and because I still have that kind of ebullient vibe, looking at this stuff as growing up, reading these books, I was fighting myself, and also having your words in my ear, like there's something off with this thing, that's off-putting. I'm a Black man, so you're supposedly not being able to kind of superimpose yourself on the Asian man. But I know some of the issues with Asian men and emasculation and all that kind of thing. So I'm looking at like, this isn't the Shang-Chi that I grew up with. Shang-Chi was
right.
Shang-Chi and Marvel in the early 70s was that whole thing was meant to be a template for the Bruce Lee phenomenon.
Yeah.
Bruce Lee was this proud Chinese man. He was very upfront about racism. He was very upfront about his interactions with white men. He brought brothers at play. Kareem was his boy. I mean, we know the whole thing with Bruce Lee. Many Black men thought Bruce Lee was quasi-Black because he presented a certain traditional male image. This was not that guy. So I don't want to go. I could talk. We're going to do a show about it. Anyway, so let me just say quickly. I think at this point, and I have to defer to, believe it or not, Reverend Sharpton. Reverend Sharpton said something. And I'm no big fan of Reverend Sharpton, but he did say something about the civil rights movement, that people get this thing twisted. That oftentimes Black folks will say, we did this, we did that. there was no we in the civil rights movement. There was a select group of black people that got tired of certain things, and they just took the hit and decided to go forward and make changes. And I think that's what's ultimately going to have to happen with black men, black traditional men, not to kind of lambaste what's happening with other LGBTQ and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go there with that. I just know that I'm becoming more and more uncomfortable with the imagery that I think has been foisted on black people. Well, not even just black, just the globe is perceiving us in a certain way that's just it's blowing my mind. And because I'm a pop culture guy, I took certain things for granted growing up, seeing certain imagery that now it's like, wow, Jim Brown did that, Fred Williamson did that. Even cross-racially, if you think of, again, Bruce Lee or Steve McQueen or some of these people, you still got something from that. And now that world, which I grew up on, I don't recognize it. And it seems as if blackness has been, but more acutely now, is the reservoir for dysfunction. So when it comes down to trying to experiment on something, this is my impression, but I'm pretty sure there's some scholarship that will back this up. When it comes down to how we want something to go down, they want to try to push LGBTQ culture. Again, I'm not going to speak on that. People have the right to self-determination. However, why am I seeing blackness being intertwined with that wholesale, where we don't see the same kind of energy being levied toward white default people? I don't see that.
Why are you seeing Lil Nas X doing what he's doing now?
Where's the white equivalent to that? Where's the equalizing of that?
Do you know when I say Lil Nas X? Do you know what he just did?
Oh yeah. Oh, come on. Oh yes. Oh yes. He's giving.
Oh Jesus, not Lil Nas, man.
He's giving birth to a bouncing baby turd. Trust me on that.
Jesus, man, this is like another episode with that man. It's just every month it's something new. Like I'm scared to watch any of his new videos and all that, man. I'm traumatized by that Negro, man.
BGS,
wow.
Is he a Manchurian candidate? BGS.
I don't think he's a Manchurian candidate. I think what he is a lot of stuff that's been boiling over in the background that you don't usually see, and now they're bringing it forward because this stuff has been going on.
Dang.
Yeah. So So what you're seeing is the counterculture.
Is that all the shower scenes included with the prisoners and all that? That's the counterculture too. Because that looks like propaganda to me. Like,
yeah. Well, the thing is that it's being pushed. That's true. It is propaganda, but it's also like I said, the counterculture has been there, but now it's they're actually making it more known. But that's the Me Too. That's the transgender stuff that's been around forever. The thing is now they're promoting it more. They're making it seem
forefront.
Yeah.
And for it being in the forefront, it's also pushing on the image of black people. You gotta understand, Dr. Tia Sinai, we Gen Xers, man. You would never all right. Here's the funny thing. The very last prototypical masculine heterosexual rapper that was popular just passed away a few months ago. That was DMX. Now we have, you have a different versions of rappers. Like back in the day, if a rapper was gay, you didn't know about it. But the thing was, growing up, it was masculinity, even just the gangster image, but hardcore rap, it was that. But now you have horror culture, you have LGBTQ culture, and now it's right. Now you have Lil Nas X and Megan Thee Stallion and Nicki Minaj and all these women coming out. But also at the same time, for the Zia guys at the time, it's making masculine image soft. So that's why you have this now where the natural masculine man is black men. Just what we have. So we have to tamp it down. Even if the black man supposed to be a hero or if he's a hero. They did it with Luke Cage. Like when Dr. T, we were talking, like, even though Luke Cage seemed to be a hero, they still kind of had to make him be this kind of angry black man that he went through this problem. And even when he was in love with the woman, they had to show him getting angry and he's punching the wall and the woman gets afraid. And she kind of like how the way the other day, Dr. T, you were talking about where Candyman's protecting his woman and he has to break all the mirrors, but his woman thinks that, oh God, you're volatile and everything. But
trying to hurt me.
You're you know, but when you see Daredevil, he talks to Karen, and Karen says, "Well, you just can't do this." And she's crying for him. But if it's a black man and a Latino woman, a black man and a black woman, oh, you're volatile, you're this, you're that, and I'm like, really? Yeah. He was just saving Harlem, like, in a few scenes.
Well, at least he was allowed to have his coffee, if you know what I mean. I appreciated that.
But here's another thing. Even though having his coffee,
I'm gonna keep it 1,000. That brother had it. That brother had that coffee.
But so can I tell you something? But think about that though.
Yeah, you know where the coffee thing comes from, right? Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no,
because he could have had some latte. I'm just keeping it 1,000. He had coffee. So
he had some latte.
Yeah, he had some latte.
He had some latte too, bro.
well, I'm using it a different way, but okay, I see what you're saying. I get it.
That was milk. That was milk.
Well,
it was.
I'm not gonna go
I was looking at Lil Nas X. Yeah, I was looking at Lil Nas X and the Baby Bump, but they've tried this before. They tried it with the Billy Crystal and the Rabbit Test about a pregnant man. They did it with Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think in the 80s with Junior. Yeah, but the thing is, it never took. It never took. So I guess things don't take unless you use a black man.
Exactly.
And there's a certain amount of equity when it comes to black history, black politics, black activism. If you tie it to blackness, you can justify what you're saying. I mean, really, the only two people in the white liberal mind that have the freedom to do whatever they want and not really be publicly, attacked to any great degree, technically, as far as race, it would be black and Native American. And when you get down to the specifics, you start talking about black women more so than black men. But there's an equity there that many of these white liberals want to use to advance whatever politics they want. So if you put a white gay man up, there might be some blowback. You put a black gay man up, people feel like they're attacking the victim. So there's that's what I mean by some kind of social justice equity in black struggle that they're trying to use for other demographics.
But to the point to what is it?
Afro nerd.
How do you say it's Afro?
Okay, hold on. Somebody's got a
lot of noise in the background.
You or Malika? I wasn't paying attention who was speaking, but I think both of you too were touching on the generation. So part of the issue that we're looking at is, and someone said that throughout the talk we're talking about black men are able to recognize the heroic principles in life, and women necessarily are not really bred that way. So part of the problem is that our attack on white supremacy has really been turned into an attack on masculinity, because I was having this thought today because people saying, oh, the white Jesus was not the issue for black men. It was not the issue, but because black men in general, right? They see the heroic principles in other men, irregardless of their race. That's just the reality. So for a black man to idolize a white man is nothing. That doesn't mean he wants to be white. He just sees the heroic principles. But on the other hand, when a black woman looks at a man, she doesn't see the heroic principle. She sees that man and she wants to be that man with that man, and she wants to submit to that man. So what we have now we have a civil rights movement that was about not seeing heroic principles, but actually becoming submissive to white people, and so they're using us as black men. They think that they're giving us the impression that we're fighting the same war. Actually, we are not fighting the same racism. They're fighting to be submissive to the white man, and we're fighting to eradicate the oppressiveness, so that we ourselves can also be these heroic figures too.
All right, now let me go ahead and introduce. We got yoga apparently on here. Welcome. Can you hear us?
Hey, Doc, can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me, Doc?
Yeah, we can hear you. What's going on?
What's going on? I know a couple brothers on the panel, been on a couple of their shows. What's up to all the brothers on the panel? But I want to bring a perspective that I'm seeing in real time, so I want to share it to y'all brothers on the panel and the brothers listening. What I'm seeing, what I've saw back, and when I'm back in Atlanta, back home on the news stations in Atlanta, you know how you get used to your different news anchors and you know them, and they promote the news anchors around town. Well, in Atlanta, what they're doing is they're slipping in transgender women that are converted over to men and putting them in suits and making them look masculine and presenting them as man. And they slip one in on the news in Atlanta. And I'm looking and I'm looking and I'm like, this guy looks funny. This guy looks funny. It's on the Channel 2 ABC syndicate in Atlanta. So it's the Channel 2 ABC syndicate in Atlanta, and the guy, which was a woman named is George, is supposed to be like Latino, and we're looking and we like, he's too. This is what we're saying. It's something wrong. His features. It's just something off and going on about it. And then it came out. A couple of people and my lady was like, you know what you were saying? Like someone's right about that news anchor, and I was like, she was like, your senses were just on point. So they're presenting transsexuals to us as masculine men. So it's strange that they're attacking us as regular men in the movies and the TV, but then they're trying to replace us with, this situation, and it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Doc, I wanted to add something, and I was kind of going back with this issue of the civil rights movement. The reason why I brought up that analogy was because we clearly see that it's a few people that can make some changes. And I think this kind of discussion, this kind of discourse is necessary, that it's got to be able to, we got to transition what we say into a kind of advocacy. It's strictly black male preservation, tradition, that kind of thing, without off-putting all these other groups, because you're going to get in trouble for that. And really, it's not really necessary. I
don't think that's possible, bro.
Well, look,
I don't think that's possible. This whole bloodless war theory, look, these people are not going to play fair. They are not interested in the interest of black men. And by the way, that includes your own sisters and other female kin and kid. They don't care. They want to win, right?
Well, let me finish my point. Let me finish my point of what I was leading to was, I hear what you're saying. The only issue I have with what you're saying is I'm seeing other people do it, and I'm seeing other groups all of a sudden, whatever they are saying or demanding, people are doing backflips. An example was, and I couldn't believe I saw this on the Breakfast Club popular syndicated show. Mm-hmm. We you know what happened with the baby and his issues. He said something negative toward gay people or whatever. So the Locks were on there. The Locks is a group from the 90s from out of New York. The Locks spoke like corporate PR people when it came to the LGBT community. I said I can't believe what I'm watching. They were saying, well, the baby just has to understand that these are new times and that we have to be respectful, and he was raised in a certain way. I said, when did these guys get masters and PhDs all of a sudden? All of a sudden they started speaking differently and respectfully about the LGBTQ. Now what I will say with that is that, you know what? Good for the LGBTQ, because they felt like they were disrespected, and all of a sudden people are doing backflips. For some reason, I sat there, I said, why can't these same Negroes who have been making anti-black, misandrous, and misogynistic, all the negatives about blackness and dysfunction. They've been disrespecting black people. We're going to keep it 1,000 for about 35, 40 years.
Because it's about black people, Afro Nerd. It
We get
doesn't
that.
matter. It's about black people.
Yes.
Here's one thing you have to understand. The Locks are not just rappers, they're businessmen. And the thing is, they're having to play the game. If they said anything against the LGBTQ or the alphabet community, their careers would have been in an upheaval. Even though that they did so great on that versus battle, if they said anything against that, their careers would have been done.
Well,
Here's the thing, hold on.
We can't be the outside. How long are we going to be, realistically? How
Forever.
long are we
Forever.
going to be
Forever.
the outsiders on this?
It's already done.
Everybody goes there. I mean, everybody gets it in except for us.
Whoa, hold on. One at a time.
It's a caste system. You're not going to break this caste system, sir.
It's a forever contract, bro. It's a lifetime contract. Day and night, all day.
I would challenge that notion because the success of Kevin Samuels is showing something different. It is possible. It's just there has to be enough men, and Kevin said this on the show, there has to be enough men to risk it to do it.
What's going to happen? Basically what is happening is what's going to happen is going to be absorbed. That's already happening, and it's possible. The thing is possible to get some kind of detente. Will you be equal, or will you get the status that you're supposed to get as an equal citizen in this country? Probably not. The thing is to get some kind of detente. The Kerner Commission was supposed to do that back in 1968, where most of the white women took those gains. But the thing is that it's very difficult to change a hardened culture inside. Once it gets started. So will you make some gains? Yes.
Well,
the thing is, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say quickly. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think on a micro level, right? We're starting to see just our conversation. The manosphere is supporting itself to a large degree. We're seeing Rome wasn't built in a day. So what I'm simply saying is I'm starting to see a little small sliver of backbone from black men. Matter of fact, we saw a little bit of that apple cart tipping with Simone Sanders and what was going on with the politics when Luther Campbell, who I'm no big fan of, but he came out and said some things that, look, we're not really supporting Senator Harris not because she's a black woman, but because she did some things legally that we didn't really respect. And then Simone Sanders says, "Oh, you better shut your mouth because the black women are coming, black girl magic," essentially what she said. And I think that that's spurring black men to say, look, we have a separate thing going on. We have separate issues. And a doctor spoke about this as well, Dr. Johnson. He also said that the real issue is black men are the I guess the linchpin, or they're the screw in this intersectional thing, because the intersectional thing doesn't quite work. Because it's like, wait a minute, black men, and even the gender aspect of it specifically, we would fit in there. There's such a thing about when they talk about, when they talk about patriarchy, they never say specifically white patriarchy or black patriarchy. I mean, we never really. How did the patriarchy? How does it work for us? But black men, we don't have that power.
It doesn't. And the thing is, if black men have to stop going along with the narrative. Okay, you saw the same kind of narrative in the film we're talking about, which is respect, right? The narrative of the black patriarchy, which never existed because her father or her first husband, even the men around her were all controlling. That's the example of the black patriarchy, the abuse. Even the so-called guy that so-called molested her. That's an example of the evil black patriarchy that doesn't really exist. And the things we have to speak out against it because it doesn't exist.
But BGS, tell them about James Earl Jones. I think you have this idea that black men are just waking up. Black men have always been woke. If you go back to James Earl Jones,
well, okay, that's true. That's true.
He talked about how black women Like black men always knew this. It's just that now we're just getting airtime. But
Yes, so
black
we're getting
men
airtime.
have
Yeah,
always known
I've
this,
always known.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, look,
Yeah, and in the past there were some regulatory things that mitigated the degree of the misbehavior of black women that no longer exist.
Yeah.
I mean, you did have more. Marriage was a thing back then, for example. The church had real influence over certain moral and ethical behavior, and the society was still much more segregated along most of the social criteria in this country. So that somewhat mitigated the misbehavior of black women. Most of those things are gone now, and now she is crying havoc
well,
throughout black communities and families.
Well, let's go back into the history a little bit. Let's go back into the history, because now you're tipping into something that I failed to. I kind of mentioned a little bit with Jim Brown and stuff, but again, I'm a Generation X person, so I do recollect still a lot of males in black neighborhoods. It wasn't completely full throttle female-led households. At least I saw that, and I come from a 2-parent household, so there's things that I saw, right? But I also, and now I'm forced to reminisce it more intentionally. But whether it was Malcolm X or Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Jr. I mean, you had even to tell you how things are crazy. James Baldwin spoke in a certain way as a gay person. Okay, he still spoke about the protection of black traditional men. As a gay man. So this whole thing, now Billy Porter, God bless him, is not going to weigh in the way that James Baldwin did. So some of this stuff is really phony. And that's what I'm saying is that I would label what we're doing now as a kind of advocacy, certainly. Definitely, Dr. Johnson is creating the infrastructure of some of this, but the manosphere is growing, and it's becoming a problem because you're starting to see people get all twisted up. Even our own women are getting all twisted up for a reason, when a lot of what's being said is absolute truth. Really can't be deconstructed. So I think from how I was raised, we need to just go on. We need to just do what we need to be doing. Look, maybe I saw too many Jim Brown pictures where he was choking white men and throwing them off roofs or something. So I saw some stuff that I just believe that. So not that I'm advocating violence.
Afro nerd, I got some questions to ask you.
Sure.
Back during the time when James Baldwin was around, what was going on? What was the tension?
Well, which every direction. You had the Vietnam War. You had civil rights movement. You had it was more chaos in the 60s than it is now.
In his books and his plays, what did he personify in those plays? What struggle did he personify?
What was the black struggle?
Okay. Now we come ahead 60 some odd years, 70 years. We have Little Nas X. What does Little Nas X and what does Billy Porter personify?
Intersectionality.
Okay. James Baldwin, Bayard Rustin, they were gay men, and they were using the civil rights movement to help promote homosexuality, but they also knew the struggles of black people. Billy Porter, Lil Nas X, there's no struggle for black people. There's not even that much struggle for the LGBTQ. They've come apart, like BGS has always talked about. They have become a part of the society, and they become a part of a certain group in a culture society which accepts them, and they can be open and free, and they don't and they can talk about racism and problems, but they're not speaking on that. They're being free to expose and express themselves, and also try to promote another image that has nothing to do with being a free masculine black man. They're worrying about just being free and wanting to do what they want. James Baldwin had a different idea and a different view, and he also understood the destruction of the black male image.
Well, part of what we're looking at too is this this is all post identity, the media identity wars of the 80s. This is the era of intersectionality. So the idea that people like Lil Nas X have is that there is a somewhat liberatory tone, but their definition of liberatory is if you can fully express your identity without pushback, really, which is code for if you can acquire policy benefits, if you can acquire political power, and if you that's the idea around liberation. And they're not using that terminology directly, but the subtle idea of what liberation looks like today is for various demographics to be able to acquire political power through representation. So this is why you have these pictures that Lil Nas X is doing, or these little, whatever these little beefs are to get attention, because attention is supposed to at some point transition into political power through being able to live out your identity publicly. But there's a severe shift from the 60s and 70s to now where you didn't representation wasn't synonymous with political power. Activism was supposed to be the route to political power. After the 1980s, we went into this whole different narrative where if we could just get on TV, if we could just get in movies, if we could just be represented, if we could just that will transition into some kind of societal power. No, but that's what we're pushing for. So that's what you have the Lil Nas X's for. They're up there looking for attention, and the idea is that attention is going to translate into greater representation, and greater representation is going to translate into resources and policies.
That's true.
Can I point out something with Lil Nas X? The thing with Lil Nas X is, if you think about his climb up, Lil Nas X, I didn't know. Like I'm about to be 29. I listen to hip hop. I don't really listen to rap that much, but from what I know, Lil Nas X came out of nowhere, and his first hit was with Billy Ray Cyrus, who is a country music legend. And it just so happens he's a gay black guy, and it just so happens that during the Year of the Black Woman at the BET Awards, he does what he does, and then he continues to push the narrative. He is absolutely 100% a propaganda tool, because it's like, how does someone who literally is a nobody get on a track, mix two things that are completely different, mix rap and country music? One is predominantly black, the other one is seen as predominantly white today. And not only mix the two, but he literally gets on a track with a country music legend. You know what I'm saying? Like, that makes no, like, those two shouldn't have even been in the same room, but somehow they were. You know? So now I'm kind of wondering, okay, where the heck did this Lil Nas X guy come from? You know?
Well, let me say something. Let me say something quickly. Because we talk about music as well on the show. We're all over with the pop culture stuff, but that goes to a larger issue of just the general control of black imagery and how it really is purposeful as to what we're seeing. And there's got to be a way, because everyone else, as I said before, seems to be able to kind of make things change. You see women consolidating, women and cross-racially, but let's say white women specifically, they're consolidating power and they're upending white CEOs. They're losing, whether it's governors, my own governor, now there's a female governor now. So we're seeing them able to acquiesce, even what they've done on social media. They've been able to move that into real life, upending power, and upending white male power, and getting their gigs. But as far as our representation or the accuracy of the black image, what is that issue is, there's more to blackness than just hip hop. I listen to Afropunk. I listen to the Black Rock Coalition with Vernon Reid. There's blues, jazz, funk. There's all these things going on. I've gone to Afropunk festivals, at least pre-pandemic. Was 100,000 black people, where white folks some are there. They got white hipsters there, and they're looking at. Well, I didn't know black people were into this. So we don't even know ourselves. So
I think what you're missing. I think what you're missing here, and I want to give some clarity. When I've been listening, is that what we haven't defined is when you're talking about black people and when you're talking about change, you first have to understand what is black people. Essentially, what is quintessential black is a black male. All right. First of all, first and foremost, BLM knew that. Everyone knows, the white supremacy, when they put out COINTELPRO, they know quintessentially what being black is, the male aspect, the male gender. So then you have, okay, change. What kind of change? So you're wanting us to go a route that other people go. Okay, granted, they are having success, but what you're suggesting is that we want the same kind of change that they want, and we don't want the change that they want. We want to be able to be men, and that's the narrative that we're trying to put out. We want to be men. We're not looking for handouts. We're not looking for change. We're looking to be left the fuck alone so we can be men.
I hear you. I look. I'm not really disagreeing with you per se, but I look.
Yeah, yes,
But
I
but look. I guess the issue is, I'm more
Well,
of a
y'all got to figure out a way in which other people can live happy, successful, productive, rich lives without exploiting black men. That's what you
yeah.
got to figure out. Because
Mm.
this is a pyramid scheme. America is a pyramid scheme. It's always been a pyramid scheme, and black men have always been at the base of that pyramid scheme. So if you remove black men from the bottom, what do you have in America?
Jenga.
Well, look. Something that Dr. Johnson talks about a lot. I think all of this, we can talk about, black men's positioning and everything, but we do have data on our side. We can talk about all these issues and all the difficulties, and I don't believe this is going to be like a cemented thing. I don't believe this is necessarily cemented. What I do know is that we do have the data. Black men many of us are doing quite well. Many of us are not doing well. We're still undereducated, underrepresented, dying prematurely. We have rappers are leaving the planet at 39, 49, barely 50 years of age.
Yeah.
And we're acting as if that's a natural. Some of them even be described as natural causes, which is laughable. So the white rockers live to be 80, 90, 100 years old. So there's a distinction going on. I'm just saying that as long as we stick to the data and say, look, this is what's going on right now. They can talk about all this fantasy all they want, but the scholarship is definitely there.
Yeah, but you got to get people to care about it. That's the problem. The data's been there. I mean, the Brookings Institute's been printing out for the last 10 years. The data's been there. They've been doing research after research. They've been with fact after fact. They've been doing this for the last 20 years. The thing is, how do you get people to care, including your own women?
Can black women rise without stepping on our head?
That's a great question.
I mean, that's what you're talking about. I mean, you can talk data all you want to, but let's look at what's happening. They have risen, stepping on the heads and the carcasses of their men. Some of them even their own sons.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about, well, we can do it, I'm like, well, okay, we're 6% of the population, maybe 4.5% of the electorate, maybe. Comparing us to what women are able to do, women are over 50% of the electorate. Women are over 80% of have over 80% of control over consumer purchases in this country. Comparing what we are in this country to what women are, especially mostly including white women, that's not only an apples and oranges comparison, that's an apples and prime rib comparison.
Well, look, if you go back, okay, I'll give you an example. Recently, I think Harvard is initiating some kind of Black Wall Street study, like literally studying how Black Wall Street came to be, and some of the things, some of what we perceive to be kind of regular financial entities like micro lending. Micro lending dates back to what happened in Black Wall Street. So black people already figured this stuff out during Reconstruction, going into Black Wall Street's plural. Now, there was a black patriarchy back then, even though it was under Jim Crow. Obviously, black men tried their best to defend those soldiers from World War I were there to try to at least make an effort to defend Black Wall Street, the Tulsa riots. So what I'm saying is, Black men, if you go into the archives, actually did some things. They were able to work together because they didn't have a choice. You had pig laws, sundown laws. You had Jim Crow, grandfather clause. You had all these things going, all that stuff going on. Now, all of a sudden, we don't know what to do. So I don't believe that.
But listen, brother.
Hold on, we've come through worse.
But you're
now
okay,
we have air conditioning now. So I don't believe in self-defeatism.
Hold on.
To the data. Let's go back to the data. Let's go back to the data you talked about. So what you're saying is true. So, but here's the thing: Black men are not looking to end racism because as men. No, I'm serious. You have to consider this reality. As a man, right? A real man is not looking to destroy higher echelons of power. That's not what men. That's not what we're seeking to do. What we're seeking to do is actualize the power we have, not destroy another power. That is not the goal. The goal isn't really for Black men. The goal isn't to defeat racism. You know what I'm saying? It's just another power.
We're saying the same thing. We're actually saying the same thing. Black Wall Street.
Well, let him finish. Well, it did exist. Okay, let's get something straight about Black Wall Street, right? Number one, it was actually formed in Oklahoma. Was actually designated for what? Black and Indian territory. So it was already issued by the United States as their own territory, right? We got to remember, Black Wall Street was like 8,000 people surrounded by 40,000 white folks. So it was a district, okay? Black Wall Street was a district, but basically inside of an oppressive system. And they got lucky, okay? They were lucky because they're sitting on what? A pool of oil.
This is true, but look, there were also Black Wall Streets, plural. Whether it's Seneca Village, whether it's Central Avenue in California, whether it's whether Durham, Rosewood, there are a number of Black Wall Streets. I guess what I'm saying is,
and what happened to them?
I get it, but what I'm saying is that they existed. I agree with the brother said about not really kowtowing or capitulating to racism. I'm not even I'm not into Whitey does us wrong every 5 minutes. I'm not into that. Right now, we have to deal with these Black folks. We have to deal with our women, and we have to deal with other Black men. So I'm not of a standard of always deferring to white people. The white man's not in my mind like that.
Okay.
That's why I am called the Afro nerd for a reason. It's called Afro nerd. So my thing is, we need to be very laser focused on this Black man stuff right now. And I'm really digging it. And I think that when you go into this archive, when you go into the archive and see what the old crew, the classic Blacks did, because you got new Blacks now. The classic Blacks operated a certain way. The archives are there like an old movie. Dust off those archives and see what the classic Blacks did. We're not doing that.
And the upper echelon Blacks still do. Okay, got to remember the upper echelon Blacks. We're talking about the Black bourgeoisie, the Greenwoods, the Black Wall Streets, whatnot. They're a very small percentage. You got to remember before 1945, right? 80% of Black people are actually in poverty. Okay. Black folks didn't come out of like in 1960 over 60% of Black people were still in poverty, okay, and didn't come out of poverty until the Great Society, okay. So the thing is you got to put all this stuff in context. We're talking about a small amount of Black people. We're not talking about a Black people as a whole, okay, or even a great majority. So you have to put this in context. So now you're going to take a small percentage of Black people that were doing well. There's always been Black bourgeoisie. There always has. You know, the Harlem Renaissance was Black bourgeoisie. The thing is, how do you lift the whole group? Because you can't. How are you gonna lift the whole group? That's what I'm talking about.
Well, look, W.E.B. Du Bois was trying to answer that question in 1903,
and he didn't answer it, did he? Did he answer it? Okay.
But the problem was
Martin Luther King tried to answer it in 1960s. Did he answer it?
Nobody answered it yet.
See, that's why I said earlier. You know, I mean. You guys got to come, and BGS said it as well. This is a caste system, brother.
Yeah.
This is designed to be what it is. America was built on that. It's in the soil. It's in the mineral. You know, our position in this country It's not a coincidence. It's not an accident. It's not by virtue of myriad mistakes that black people have made and the failure to rebuild Black Wall Street and all that nonsense. No,
They did.
it's
They
a
did rebuild Black
pyramid
Wall
scheme.
Street.
It's a pyramid scheme. It's predicated on, for example, the most brilliant black men getting 1 cent on a dollar for their creation. That's why when people celebrated a few years back that Jay-Z was the first billionaire hip hopper, right? If Jay-Z were a white man, he'd be worth $20 billion by now, $30 billion by now. Russell Simmons would have become a billionaire 20 years ago. You know, it's not a coincidence. And you're not just competing against any particular company or any particular industry. The banks are working together with the real estate people, working together with the government, working together with Wall Street to all keep your ass at a certain level. Now, as said earlier, a few of us are able to operate as buffers. Your privileged Jack and Jill folks, you know, those folks, the boule. Yeah, they are a regulating force, essentially. But make no mistake, any major competition from black men in this country will be met very harshly. And the ones who will most harshly operate against us is that chick that's lying in bed next to us.
Unfortunately, the thing that I want is basically all the work that was done from basically really from World War I, right? For when the basically black soldiers fought in World War I, right, and were hung in their uniforms. And the second time when you saved America's ass in World War II from the Japanese and the Germans, they finally gave us a break, and all those hard-fought gains got taken because the Kerner Commission was actually outlined all the affirmative action jobs that in positions that black men were supposed to get. We finally earned your position, and guess who they give it to? They give it to white women, and guess who allows it? Black women. Okay, and so the thing is, what I want is what's due us, what we worked for.
Yes.
Well, that's why I've said, BGS, that's why I said in the past, there is no plan that don't include black men at some point suing black women.
Yeah.
There is no point. There is no solution. All these black female organizations, the schools, all these programs, all these grant programs, you got to take all of them out. You got to take them all out. And they are vulnerable. They are vulnerable to skillful legal challenge.
I'll say this much. I think that what happened in the past, because there's been varying degrees of a kind of promoted dysfunction. And we could talk about the minstrelsy songs dating back to the early 1800s, which is something that people I don't think do enough investigation. Think about what these rap songs are, how they name their songs, and then you look at like the 1830 songs, the titles of those songs with the N-word, the N-word doesn't have his own country and that kind of thing. It's literally the same thing 200 years later. So what I'm saying is, but even going back to the 1800s, 1900s, the promoted black dysfunction was not at the same level as it is right now. I think if we were able to attack how we are viewed with greater intensity, I think that would be the one brick that would we could loosen up, and things would start to fall down. We cannot continue to have this inaccuracy of portrayal with black men, black people in general, but black men specifically. It's no one else is going through this. Jewish people, they're not. Michael Jackson, the biggest star in the world, had to catch it because he used the K word, and they said, you know what, we're not going to let you do that. Now we will continue to let you say the N word. We'll pay you very handsomely for that, but we won't allow that for you to disrespect us. So let's we address the promoted the Lenny Riefenstahl kind of thing. That's we got to get on top of this.
But the thing is, when they give you, the thing is, when we do that, in fact, the social media is the only mic that black men really have, because most of the mic was actually given to black women. We just saw it. We just reviewed this stuff. Okay. Yeah, they've been given the mic for the last 50 years. and they've been designated to be the liaison between, as they always have been, and they the Nathan Julia Harris said the same thing. Black women have been the liaison between black men and the white world. Okay, because black men have always been dangerous in this country, right? They've always been this disruptive force, which is why they've always been
With the
the things
boogeyman.
in place. There all been things in place to tamp it down, because as soon as black men started doing what, okay, we're going to arm ourselves, we're going to patrol our neighborhoods with guns or whatever. Who comes in? The feds come in and break up the whole organization. There's a reason for that. Okay, don't get it twisted. They still keep an eye on you.
And as far as our image is concerned, who's done more to damage the image of black men over the last 40-odd years than black women?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Ooh.
You know, and still continue to do it.
Right. And brother Afro nerd, that's where, when you're talking about this change, you're kind of muddying the waters of what we're trying to do. We're not looking for change. We're looking to be able to control our narrative, not change it, control it.
What? Okay, we're just getting into semantics. I wouldn't disagree with what you said at all.
Semantics is important, though.
I'm going to say some facts, and they're totally true. There's more broke white people than there are rich white people. Yet the narrative is white people control everything. No, it's a select few white people that control everything. So if you look at it, all the media does, all perception does, is with white people, the spotlight is on their wealthy, they're successful. With black people, unfortunately, the spotlight is on the poor and the ones that were raised by single moms and the ones that get promoted through the propaganda and stuff. And that's why it's like, to me, there's two different races of black people. There's the black people, like you guys call them the bourgeoisie, because there's always been successful black people. Like, look at Anton, another YouTuber. All his uncles, all his grandfathers, successful, married, wealthy, all that. Those group of black people have always existed. It's just when that whole shift happened and black women went their own way separate from us, that's where the spotlight was focused. They're the majority. Media wanted to be like, hey, look at this, for obvious reasons, propaganda, instead of giving the successful ones their props, instead of putting the spotlight on the successful black men and the successful black families that are out there. So I believe if you do control the narrative, that's a good step, because we're not going to be able to hoist everybody up. The same way that these white people talk about their poor people, they call them rednecks. They call them rednecks, hicks, whatever the heck you want to call them. They treat them just the same. They treat them just the same way we treat the so-called niggas. Like, let's just be real. They ain't trying to. They're not trying to grab their hands and lift them up.
Right.
Instead, they just got control of the narrative.
You're making a good
Bullshit.
point.
Hold on. Order in the court, right?
I don't know.
Oh, we got an order. Can I get a chicken cheesesteak with everything on it?
Okay, it'll be 15 minutes, sir.
Shit, 15 minutes. I love you. Got good service time.
Yeah, well, you get good service time. Go ahead.
But real talk, has anyone here ever heard white people talk about poor white people?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
They talk about them the same way we talk about broke niggas, like
they don't.
the Pookies and Ray Ray. Yes, they do.
Don't.
Yes,
no,
they
don't. Because guess what?
Is that
what's
Charles?
their common trope?
One time.
A poor white man is still a white man.
Okay? Because guess what? That poor white man will still have allegiance to him. Okay?
Okay, if folks haven't figured it out, welcome Officer Charles to the panel. What's going on, man?
Yeah, though, as a poor white man can still vote.
Well, Lee Atwater spoke about that.
Yeah,
The late Lee.
And poor white men have a lot of guns. They have a lot of guns.
They do.
And white men in power keep an eye on that kind of shit.
But look, we're going
back in the day.
One time,
Back in the day,
y'all.
back in the day, all white men did not have the right to vote.
BGS, you spoke on that.
Poor white
One time.
Poor white men were always
fire police.
Yes.
Yeah, BGS spoke on that.
But we're going back into the same kind of malaise. We're going back into the same kind of circular argumentation.
What's the circular argumentation that we're talking about?
Well,
one time. Yeah, we hear you. Good.
Yeah.
What's the circular argumentation that you're talking about? Because we don't understand where you're going
Okay.
with
What
this.
I'm saying is,
Mm-hmm.
we're going into deferring to whiteness. Well,
Okay.
white people, whatever goes on, they don't like.
Okay.
They don't like
Okay.
poor white people. Look, we already. That's true, right? But Lee
Mm-hmm.
Atwater, you know him as the late Republican strategist.
Mm-hmm.
He had said, "Look, if we make a poor white man feel that he's above a black man, I'm using better words than what he said,
Mm-hmm.
then it's all good. So it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter how we feel about white people. He's kind of lending toward, well, maybe if white people understood
That was the
Okay.
point he was making.
No. Where's your What point are you trying to make? We understand that.
Well,
What point?
my point is we need to go back to, let's focus on the black folks, black males that
Mm-hmm.
want to be cohesive in an agenda, that support each other, because we've seen clearly black women are doing that. Black women are supporting each other. Black Girl Magic.
They always have, and the black men were never allowed to form connections like that, where black women always have. Okay, that we actually, and basically, what black men don't want to admit is that black women control your society, and they always have. Okay, they always
Okay,
have.
I agree with you, but what about now, at present? Clearly, we're seeing
It's the same thing. The only difference you're seeing is that the way black men are able to connect is on social media, outside the bounds of the control mechanisms. Okay.
For now.
Okay,
For
but
now,
social
yeah.
media, hashtag me too, hashtag times up started a social phenomena. Now they're upending white males out of power.
Actually, Me Too started back in the 1980s at small colleges. It started on campus first, and then spilled out to a hashtag. Me Too was actually started on campuses. Campuses a long time ago, 20, 30 years ago. It didn't just start yesterday. It's been a long time. Now we notice it now because now it's a hashtag. But thing is, in Time's Up is a hashtag. But this transition of power, this dynamic of what they call Me Too now, was basically what is it? Yes means yes. If it was no means no before. It's been a slow transition. So when it popped up, it's actually popped up in regular media, but it had already been forming as far as policy years ago. Didn't just start yesterday.
Can I get a turn to talk?
Go ahead. But I was trying to figure out where his circular argument is. Okay, because you're not going to control your media anytime soon. So I don't know where that comes from. All we can do is form a counter narrative, which is what this is. Go ahead, Charles.
Okay, from the panel to the chat on the count of 3. 1, 2, and that number 3. Woo!
You got to remember, this is not the typical chat. So this is not the typical.
I know. I'm gonna keep it
all right, go ahead. What do you want to say?
I'm confused when people say things about what women loves what and what they want. Even though my boy Mike White, the ebony to my, the ivory to my ebony, when we go out, he thinks that I got girls that he didn't want. I'm like, dude, I was laying back, but you took too long. But at the essence of things, look, a woman wants the best deal possible. It's up to her to know if she's smart enough to know what's going to be the best deal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've told several chicks. Like I've asked this one chick who I knew for years. We used to mess around, and I said, "Look, I'm done. You told me 2 weeks in a row. I understand you overslept the first one. Your son has asthma playing football. Guess what? It's your turn. I get it. I have a kid. Kids do crazy things, and it happens. It's your turn to pick. It's your turn to vie for it. See, a lot of brothers are not gonna put themselves in a position of power to say, "Look, sweetheart, I'm not pressed because there's about 10 of you who want the position you trying to vie for." Okay, and I'm like this. I've been on many a panels, multiple, various, whatever adjective you want to put in front of that adverb. Okay? Look, many of men need to understand one thing. It doesn't matter what the female thinks is valuable. It ultimately comes down to you. Because guess what? A female is not even gonna fucking put the excuse my language. But the female is not gonna put anything that's valuable that she knows she can't afford. You see, a lot of brothers. This is the part where I gotta get on black men. A lot of brothers don't understand their value in the scheme of things.
Yeah, of course they don't.
Well, you know what?
Can I ask you why? Why that is?
And I'm gonna tell you why. Like my boy Mike, he said, "Well, it was this girl named Crystal." I said, "Crystal, how you doing, love? You look lovely tonight." And she said, "I'm looking almost half as good as you. What's your name?" I said, "Well, my name is Charles. I'm gonna call you and I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna go home and you figure out what you're gonna do tomorrow morning."
Okay.
Well, you know something.
But at the same time, if I would have been sweating her, let me get you a drink, let me get you that. I said, you know what, shorty, you well off. It was a homeless brother, a black dude, who said he was hungry. I'm not gonna give you money, but if you want to eat, I'll get you what you want to eat. And she said, I never seen. I said, brothers look out for brothers all the time. Whether if we $1 million brothers or we brothers living on the street, I'm never gonna shame that brother living on the street nor a millionaire, because I know how hard it is to live on the street and survive, and how hard it is to be a millionaire and thrive. Okay. See, the problem is that it's not women who necessarily break the conduct code. It's the brothers, because we trying to excrement on the other brother.
We've been trained that way, and that's we
Exactly.
we're raised that way.
And can you say that again for the Negroes sitting in the back seat?
Which is why your black women will not give up control of their men.
And see, a lot of brothers think this about me when I tell them about my situation. I never had to go to a court system to get my son. I speak to my son before we go to school and after we go to school to let him know what the daily focus is. You do the best that you can be. If you need help with something on any subject, you tell that teacher immediately. If that teacher is not giving you what you need, you tell me, and I will make sure the information is spread viciously.
Well, BGS, I have a question. The gentleman that was just speaking, he did tap into something I find interesting that's been bothering me a little bit. I think some of the self-esteem issues that we see with black women are laying bare somewhat. We could talk about the weaves. We could talk about, we could talk about some of the imagery that they have that we could clearly see there's some self-esteem stuff going on, right? But there's also a component there's a component to black men that I think that many of us also need to concede to as well, as far as our own sense of self-esteem. Now, what I mean by that is not to toot my own horn or tap my own horn, but I am somewhat of an arrogant person. I was fortunate enough to have my father in my life, still in my life, fortunately. I lost my mother a few years ago, very, very terribly. But my father still. Thank you so much. I came from a pretty balanced situation.
Okay.
So with a solid black father, my self-esteem is there, right? So what I'm getting at.
Let him finish.
So what I'm getting at is that when I operate with certain women, they knew I got to approach this guy a little different.
Okay.
Because I'm a little arrogant. Now, when I see people like PJ Washington, I think is the basketball player.
Yeah.
Okay. You see, I'm noticing black business owners. Let's put that in quote. Black business owners, black athletes, millionaires. But they're going with waitresses, strippers, IG models, and you sit there and say, wait a minute. Why isn't there something in the atmosphere to let these? But look! I love looks too, but it only
What's
carries.
Your name, brother? What's your name, brother?
Afro nerd. Afro nerd.
BGS, can I handle this for a minute because
let me finish my point.
Yeah.
My point is, we need to start to, and I think Kevin Samuels and the Manosphere are starting to tip into this a little bit. With not that you should be rating women and that kind of thing, but I don't necessarily agree with that necessarily.
Okay, can we pin on that? Wives are probably reading women.
Yeah,
Let's put a pin on that one.
what we need to get bullet points because we're going. You're probably taking too long to get to your point. What's your point?
Okay, my point is there needs to be something in the atmosphere to get these black men to deal with their own issues with self-esteem, even as to how we have to concede to beauty all the time.
Can I handle that, BGS?
No, let me handle it because I'm gonna make it succinct, right? Okay, you cannot get past the way you were trained. Okay, what does it say? What does it say? What's it? The Christian school says, "Give me the child at 7, I give you the man." Right? Okay, unless you can actually reprogram guys. Okay, which is what Kevin's trying to do, try to reprogram these guys. And we're talking about educated guys, right? Okay, you got to reprogram these guys. You don't come out like that. You wonder why it happens because you've been trained to serve. Okay, black men have been trained to serve. You've been trained by your mothers and also been trained by your fathers that actually been trained the same way. So it's not always just the mothers either, because you hear a whole lot of guys that follow right behind the same thinking. Okay, whenever you heard black people say that you got to make sure that black boys are educated.
I heard that all my life. I heard that in kindergarten. I thought I was going to college.
But how many other black men hear what you heard? You're an anomaly, aren't you?
I think so.
In other words, what does that tell you? If you're the anomaly and not the rule, what does it tell you about everybody else? Because you notice it, right? Because you're not like everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I say that regrettably, but yeah.
Well, you regrettably you're not, right? The facts are facts. You're an anomaly. So can you build a society off an anomaly?
No, you cannot.
I mean, the fact that you mentioned that your father was prominent in your life puts you like in what, the 15th percentile of black men?
Try 5. Try 5.
And the fact that even fathers don't emphasize education to their boys.
Exactly.
Can I scoot in for a little minute because I don't want to rude.
Go ahead.
What's the brother name again? I'm sorry.
Afro nerd.
Afro nerd. Sure.
That's an Afro nerd radio.
How old are you, bro?
I'm Generation X, brother.
Okay. Let me put it to you this way.
He's a peer of yours, Charles. So blame it on you.
No, Charles is a millennial.
But I was born in '82, so I don't notice millennial. I was born in the year '82, so I don't notice millennial shit. So you gotta understand.
You're Generation X.
No, he's millennial.
Let me put it to you this way. I'm gonna put it to you this way in a phrase that you understand, bro, because we coming from the same boat. Me and my boy Mike, who's like the light-skinned version of me, we went to Fells Point in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay? We're looking at the women dance with other women. And we like, look, after we got our fill of drinks, we're going to go outside to the women who are interested. See, one thing about it is that I always talked about on my channel, and shout out to the PhD Extreme, Dr. T. See, I like being a multifaceted man. And that's one thing BGS, Black Yoda, Black Odin, that's my nickname that I gave him. Mm-hmm. And Dr. T and others, we're not allowed to be multifaceted. Today, when I picked up my son from school, I asked him as they went, he said, "Daddy, I try to go and I keep separate from everybody else. Only person I mess with is the guys I knew from 6th grade and the 8th grade. We had a good time washing the truck, vacuuming, everything. We had a very intricate conversation going on for 2 hours. And I had to build up his confidence. If you have any trouble with anything," and I'm gonna tell you what the proudest moment when my son was like, "Why are we out of school Monday?" I said, "Go look it up. What's Monday's date?" And look it up. He's like, "Oh, Daddy, it's Labor Day." I said, "Tell me, what is Labor Day?" He said, when we look at the excellence, and he spoke so vividly. Oh my God, my heart melted. Okay, sometimes we don't even give our sons their flowers. while we're still living. And as a father, see, one thing I always said on my channel, and I said on BGS and Dr. T, and guess what? We got to give, and I'm going to be the first person to say this. I'm giving the Manosphere honorary doctorate to BGS IBMOR. See, mothers accept boys' mediocrity. Fathers accept a boy's excellence. When I told my son, when we go to the comic book shop, because a lot of brothers don't understand, comic books are built for high school and college reading. And when he could tell me what excellence means, when he told me the augmentations or augmentment, that melt my heart. And sometimes you got to kiss your boy in the forehead and give him his congratulations. And see, when you give a boy a standard, he's not going to fall far from that, if any. Because one thing you got to understand, in order to style and profile, you got to have a standard to get, number, and file. Okay? A lot of us are not even told that we're men and that we're great men till we're in their 30s. Imagine what I'm telling my son at 14. Imagine what I told my son when he was 9. Imagine what you tell your sons when they're young. When you have a standard, a boy's not going to fall far from it, is he?
Nope.
That's your answer.
That's good. That's good shit.
That's your answer. Because a lot of times when we get to places like this, you and I had to come from a place of frustration when my son had to come from a place of question. I'd rather be in a place of question than frustration.
Yeah,
you know saying, bro?
But don't lose sight of the fact, and I know you haven't, that your son is coming from a place of question because you provided the shade, you provided the umbrella that allowed him to. That's
the point that I mean is because I'm going to go to that school and I'm going to make sure there's men there who fellowship with me and go with the question, because one of the guys who were teachers there, I had to give the teacher a cigar, and we had to sit out front and say, what's the best plan of option for my son and other black men there? See, we got to stop being the anomaly and start being the normal.
Well, I mean, I'll say as long as the women are the sole or primary rearer of black boys, all is lost. All is for naught. And though we can appreciate your story, Charles, and I'm sure your son does, unfortunately, you're so grossly in the minority now that it's difficult to extrapolate from what you described more broadly than that. If you don't get the boys away from these women so that they are more likely to encounter and listen to the Charles Faulkners of the world, then we're just in this endless loop of idiocracy.
And I'm gonna tell you this one, Black Odin, because you're not Thor, because you're in the point where you got the one eye, you got the wisdom of the universe, and the 2 ravens on your shoulder. Because a guy like me, this is where I get upset with BGS. Stop taking idiots on a level. And how many times I told you that for how many years, BGS?
Yeah.
I think that's BGS being sadistic. That's what I think. I think that's BGS.
He's sadistic because the old war hawk always got to pick a mouth out the field.
Exactly.
The thing,
play with it before you eat it.
The thing is, what I was.
It took me. Hold on, BGS. I'm gonna let you speak. But it took a command sergeant major to tell me this shit. Excuse my language, but we're men here. Shout out to Manosphere Daily. But we're men here. It took me an old white guy from Iowa. He says, you know why I'm a command sergeant major? I'm an E9, and I go in the field with my soldiers. And when I pass the PT test, higher than anybody else in Iraq, because guess what? we still had to keep ourselves at a high standard to be on the QRF. He says, you know why I get back in the field? Because I don't want to get rusty. Because guess what? When my dad told me when I wrestled in Iowa, and then he said, and this is a white guy saying this to this young black fella right before you. He says, I see so much of myself in you that I had to make sure I'm in shape enough to make sure you stay frosty. And it's funny that even then I was getting red pill knowledge from other men. He says, look, how many women you see going for your position? I said, none, Sergeant Major. He says, I want you to remember that. Because no matter how frosty a woman may be, she's going to still bow down to your knowledge. Even she who will not be named, who is a sergeant now. And yes, I applied to take the sergeant test again for a third time. Okay? There's no quit in my blood. And there's no you take the adjective, you take the adverb there in front of that. And I'm going to tell you, hold on, I'm going to say this.
We'll wrap it up.
I'm going to wrap it up real quick. The problem with a lot of black men is that, one, we don't believe in ourselves, and we think that there is nobody else who believes in us either. So
True.
Go ahead.
True.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Johnson.
No, but at the end of the day, there's a reason that belief is prevalent, because that's been the experience. I mean, when I tell you, the kind of brothers that we're talking about in each of the spaces we're looking at, they're rare. You know what I mean? The GGs, the Dr. Rons, the brothers are rare in every space. How many Officer Charleses are you running into on the force? Are you running into? At the end of the day, even if you look at YouTube, even if you look at the manosphere, the brothers in this space are still, statistically speaking, in the minority. So we have a window that we've never had, where brothers are able to use this free and easy space to access one another and actually build a dialogue that we've been blocked from having. And the question is, in the time we have, what are we going to do with it? Because if YouTube decided tomorrow, just like OnlyFans almost did, get rid of a whole sector of its content provider, if that happens with YouTube, where would we go? See, at the end of the day, we have to know that we're already, in the minority in regard to certain spaces, and we got to figure out what we can build on it while we have the opportunity. Whereas our sisters don't have to operate under those time constraints, because they're given a platform that we'll never be given. So we have to take it. And
I think part of the building, Doc, has got to be, at some point, we got to take on the censorship. At some point, because look, they're not going to stop, and they're going to follow you wherever they go. And if they had to create new laws to take away from you whatever it is you get or do or create or go, they will do that. They're not shy about what they want to do. They're not being subtle about what they want to do. Little Nas is not a subtle entity. It's very blatant what that's about.
Because
you described about Aretha Franklin, and you presented the people involved in that project. Ain't nothing subtle about that. Those people are not gonna. They're not gonna quietly allow black men to assert themselves. And at some point, we have to be able to say what everybody else is able to say wherever else they say it.
Let me pose a question based off of what you just said, Uru. I'm gonna pose this question. I'm gonna put this back on the screen, and we're gonna have to close out soon because I gotta go. But y'all see, this is the director. We talked about this a moment ago. This was one of the writers, right? And this is the other writer. Y'all tell me, do any of these women represent, not only, we're clear they don't represent black men, but do they even represent the Arethas of that time?
No.
No.
Heterosexual black women coming up.
Aretha would not recognize those people.
That's what I'm saying.
They look like somebody you would slap box with.
They look like somebody Aretha would have slapped.
I mean, they look like they about to be in the top 5 in the heavyweight championships of the world in both boxing, Olympic wrestling, and the
And you got some
UFC.
mixed martial arts in there too.
Wait a minute.
And
But what I'm saying, when
Hold on.
you listen to Aretha sing, especially when she's singing She Never Loved a Man Like That, do any of those women represent the experience that she comes out of that produced not the song, but the damn way she sung it? Did any of those women come out of the experience?
not even close there, Doctor, because once again, and I'm going to say this in the most eloquent way, a lot of these women were robbed of the love and protection of a good damn father. And it's not their fault.
And that's true. And whether people like it or not, no matter what they try to do with Aretha's story, she represents, and you can hear it in her music, one who was loved by her father. The way she sang about men, yeah, she had her little feminist moments. I'm not suggesting she didn't, but there was also a love in that sound.
Okay.
That I mean, y'all tell me, in the 60s and 70s, how did black folk receive that?
Right.
I mean, when I listened to her sing, I ain't never loved a man like that, that hit me.
Okay.
I say the reason it hit me is because I haven't heard that shit in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
No, you will not. And this is the robbery, Dr. T, is that one, these women now are going to be in the basic conundrum. I mean, the total conundrum of what a real man is. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to give it back to you, dear doctor. A lot of these women are waiting on Superman and Clark Kent and the Daily Planet all in their face the whole day.
Real talk. Absolutely. Well, fellas, I appreciate all you for coming on up. And most particularly, I got to shout out, BGS for jumping on. This wasn't even planned. He was just watching it. And I asked him at the last second, so I wouldn't be up here lecturing by myself. So thank you.
Hey, we ride together. We're bad boys for life, right?
Well, it's much appreciated. Shout out to Malika. Shout out to Malika. You had to drop off. Shout out to Afro Nerd. I guess he just came back in. All right, we closing out though. But any final observations, final reflections anybody wants to share before we roll?
I'll say this real quick. If anybody want to do an after party, I'm willing to do it. So let me know if you want to do an after party. I will open up a live stream. I will play like 15 minutes of music, but that music be hitting. But I will do if BGS is still up and Dr. T is still up.
We ain't gonna be up.
Before you go, Charles, what's the drink of choice tonight, sir? Because I can hear it.
Like you always know, Brother T, that it was the drink of Hennessy and a little bit of Coke. Not the white stuff, but the black stuff.
Hennessy and Coke, all right.
Well, you got to understand.
And a candy gram later.
Mike,
okay. Well, much appreciation for you being here.
Well, I had to calm myself down because it was almost going to be a candy gram right there.
All right.
But her girlfriend was upset with me.
So if anybody's interested in the after show, Brother Charles might be posting that up. So look on his channel and check that out. Anybody else got some closing thoughts?
I'll just say quickly that I thank you so much, Dr. Johnson, for letting me come on and speak a little bit. Very proud of what you've accomplished, and thank you. And the other brothers, nice to hear. I hate you almost can't say it. Masculine voices, speaking real. And I just think that as long as we continue to have the discussion and actually start to contribute to each other's platforms. I'm coming up soon on YouTube. I am on at afronerd.com, and not to go on about my thing. Just look up Afronerd, you'll find me. We need to support each other, and I think that will be what will catapult us to the next level. Thank you,
All
Dr.
right.
Johnson. Appreciate it.
Hit me on Twitter. We'll hook up. Thanks a lot.
Very
man.
good. Very good, man. Thank
All
you.
right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I wanted to clear something up that was said earlier on the stream. Black women do not control black men. They can, and here's why. They can. They have tried. They have tried.
Another
They have
hour is about to
tried,
go now.
but they have not succeeded. And here's why. Only a black man can raise another black man. The black men that they're controlling, which we refer to them as black men, they're boys, they're boy men that were raised by these very same women, and or they're pseudo men that fall victim or prey to this narrative that's being pushed upon them. And someone said these women are looking for Clark Kent. Well, they're looking for Clark Kent, but they got kryptonite in their pockets.
That's a whole nother 4 hours, man. We
Yeah,
can't even dive into that. All right.
All right. But appreciate you coming on up, Joel. Thanks a lot, brother.
Yes, that's
so
good.
let me see. Officer, I'm gonna take you down. I'm gonna take Joel down. Just let people close out. So I'll see you later, Charles. All right. All right.
He's muted. Yeah.
Okay. So Ian. No, I'm sorry. Javon, anything you want to say closing out? Oh,
going.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
man, I'm just happy to see brothers coming together, spread knowledge and trying to help each other out and whatever endeavors they choose to partake in. So I just appreciate you brothers for letting me into the space and share my opinions and my thoughts.
much appreciated, man. All right, you take it easy, man. Good brother Ian. Any words? What you think?
Yeah, man.
Close us out.
Hey, man. It was tough, man. Listen to Afro Nerd for a minute with the being accusatory with the circular argument bit, but he but the thing that prompted me to really perk my ear is that when he said Afropunk here in Atlanta deals with LGBTQ. So in a lot of ways, and that's why I asked the brother, are you married? Because in a lot of ways, we're dealing with a lot of men in the manosphere are actually LGBTQ. They are men, but they are same gender loving, and they're using our talking points, and they realize the importance of it. And I don't have anything against that either.
No, but just keep in mind though, Afropunk, especially if you're talking about Gen X, it didn't necessarily connect it like that because a lot of those brothers weren't gay. They were coming out of funk. They were coming out of. They were just in a different stream of music that wasn't necessarily mainstream, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't. But you might be talking about a new generational expression.
Yeah, the new generation.
Yeah, the new generation because Chic. Chic back in the 70s, they came out of Afropunk in the 70s. So yeah.
Yes.
And then the Fishbones and all that. But anyway, man, no, I appreciate you coming up, man. Go ahead.
But all that being said, so the thing is, I just wanted to get across that we're not looking for change. We're looking for empowerment, not change. And empowerment, in and of itself will determine whether or not we're worthy of change or not. Because we don't want to give up our manhood by going down the same routes as black females begging for white support. You know what I'm saying? And because white support always means that we're going to get always get the shaft.
Okay, I'm gonna put well, much appreciated, man. I'm saying goodnight to you while I'm also putting up Officer Charles after party link for those that are interested in going through there. But
I appreciate you guys.
Ian. Thanks a lot,
appreciate you, BGS. Thanks, guys.
All right, Ian.
All right. So, brother BGS, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, it was this BGS type night. I can say that. It's not normally you.
Yeah.
Hey, 15 minutes shy of the 4 hour mark. So you almost did it, sir. You almost did it.
I told you it was gonna turn into a damn shadow point. I told you. But no, man, I really do appreciate you coming up because even if I wasn't sure how many people would listen. And I just wanted to get this interpretation of the film on the books, because there's not a lot of places where Black men can actually do this and really get into the weeds on a given subject. So thank you for joining me on that. And I want to thank the audience. Shout out to all of y'all for joining us and supporting us. So y'all have a good night and a good weekend. And I'll be coming at you soon. There's a couple of pieces I want to look at. I'm gonna look at Shang-Chi or Shang-Chi, and then I'm gonna also look at their Eyes on the Prize, the latest edition, Hallowed Ground. So keep an ear out, and we will talk with y'all soon. Let me get my little set up here. Here we go. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic and selfish and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.